and you said coders are going to go away.
In the next 5 years.
The next 5 years, they're going away in 3 years. But you know what was amazing? When you said that on the stage, it made news throughout India. Do you remember that?
哎，它也会 shake，
It was a
我
correct
操，
prediction, and you were
也
so,
会
you were
动。
so right about that.
所以我觉得我买这个是因为它是最便宜的，不是因为我最喜欢这个颜色。
Before we get to the current AI news and robot news and economic news that we talk about in our WTF episodes, which was a little about the Abundance Summit. We had so many incredible speakers. We kicked it off with a conversation among robot. Actually, we kicked it off with Eric Schmidt.
别管它
which we streamed
能
live
源
on
就
X.
行。对，它有别的颜色，但别的颜色也不是特别好看。 14磅，这比键盘跟鼠标更贵，鼠标才7磅，英国键盘可能才10磅。
What he didn't say then is, and everything else is in trouble. It was kind of implied. He left it hanging. That was a theme actually throughout a lot of these talks. Is the period of time between now and abundance. There's all kinds of turbulence and change coming, and the AI community is now kind of soft selling that a little bit to try and focus on the ultimate abundant destination. So yes, a few AI labs worth trillions of dollars, thousands and thousands of successful startups.
差不多9到10磅。
Yeah, I guess he said like 4 or 5 in the U.S.
鼠标更便宜，所以我觉得我问呀，为什么这会这么贵？这比鼠标贵2到3倍。
What else, Alex? You remember from Eric's
Well,
presentation?
even just on that note, history does rhyme a bit. Do you remember? I think this was T.J. Watson, IBM founder, once remarking, "There will be a global market for exactly 5 computers." And I wonder whether we'll look back and say, okay, maybe there will be at most 5 major American model providers, as maybe artificially limiting the future of the Litecoin. I think it's going to be much, much larger. I thought it was interesting Eric's comments on the San Francisco consensus,
Yeah.
which he characterizes as, I think, recursive self-improvement being some point in the future.
Well, it's interesting, right? So, I mean, he was like, when are we going to see recursive self-improvement? And I kind of felt like he said like 3 years out. What's your answer to that?
Maybe 3 months ago? We're in the middle of recursive self-improvement now, and I would say my estimate of the San Francisco
奇怪，
we're deep in the middle
这个
of
薯票
self-improvement right now. Every major frontier lab has made it quite clear in the public announcements that all of the frontier
用不
models,
了
all the state-of-the-art models that have been announced in the past 2 months were largely designed and trained by their predecessors. That is, by definition,
用不了这个莫名其妙的，
Yeah, I mean, I think you can literally see it. It's
给
takeoff.
它
Take
要
off
改。
an inflection point.
And nobody wants to say it, which is the most interesting.
Why?
Well, because they're afraid that if someone knows that they have it, then other people will know that they have it. And then pressure will come from all sorts of flaws
Well,
that they have in their
especially the
contracts.
government pressure is like, look what happened in the last 2 weeks at Anthropic and OpenAI. You don't want more of that. You don't want congressmen in your building tomorrow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I asked Kevin Weil, who's also on our stage, right? Who's the VP of Science. He's in charge of using all of OpenAI's capabilities to advance science. His statement was, "I want 100 scientists winning 100 Nobels." I was like, "That's interesting," but when I asked him, "Are you going to keep your models secret because you're going to be able to use them to advance your company far faster than anybody else?" He said, "No, our job is to get out there in the public." I don't believe that.
We still don't have the model that they used to win the gold medal in the IMF.
Interesting.
You know, we commented, I think I commented at the time, that's the first bifurcation that you see. We used to have a frontier model every single time. The moment they got to that was the last time.
The other thing which was fascinating, I asked Kevin outright, and I love Kevin, he's an incredible human being. I said, okay, you're about to get an AGI/ASI that's going to be able to help you solve longevity, help you get longevity superconducting, help you get new kinds of molecules, solve, physics, chemistry, biology.
fusion. Who doesn't want fusion?
Fusion, and we'll talk about fusion, but the thing is that these are all trillion-dollar opportunities. So all of a sudden, I'm realizing that these frontier companies are going to be able to generate trillions of dollars of new revenue because of the products they're going to be creating.
What does your t-shirt say, Peter?
It says solve everything. What is your
睡觉。
Mine says,
Let there be.
there be agents.
Yes.
We're missing the lobster theme here.
That's true.
This is the whole point, though, that as we, of this book that we just co-authored, that we get super intelligence, and the killer app, arguably, of super intelligence is solving everything, including all of these high-profile, glamorous scientific and engineering challenges. It's happening.
And Anthropic and OpenAI, I'm sure Google, all the labs are hiring the top mathematicians and physicists and chemists and biologists inside. But they're software companies. Why are they hiring these people?
Because everything, so friend of the pod, Gray, as he, I think Gray would say, everything's becoming software. And when we have superintelligence solving all disease, it's a software problem. If we can create a virtual cell that perfectly models diseased states and we can steer through cell embedding space to get from diseased cell to healthy cell, it's a software problem. Everything's
I
becoming
mean,
software.
the minute CRISPR arrived and you could edit the human genome, the human body becomes a software engineer software.
It's all just a software problem.
We're
At
getting
which
there
point,
pretty quick.
a coding model can do essentially anything in the physical world.
Fascinating. We had some of the top robot CEOs here, 4 of them. We had out of China, out of the US, we had 3. And, you know, it's interesting. Question of when these robots will start to pop into our homes. I pulled Bert Warnick aside, and he promised me, okay, I'm not going to take one of the 2 robots we have here, unfortunately. But this summer, you will ship me one of those.
This summer.
One of the X robots, yes. And we'll have Brett here next year. We figure
You're gonna get one of those too, right? You're gonna have them head out.
probably duke it out in the backyard for entertainment. I think one other CEO we had here at the Abundant Stage, which was amazing, was Dara, the CEO of Uber. What did you find interesting about what Dara's comments?
You know, Dara, the crowd wanted to know desperately, like, what's the timeline to automation, self-driving car, robotics? He's like, you know, we're going to automate 30% or so of our employment this year. And I'm listening to this. I'm on so many boards where the CEO is telling me, Dave, talk to my whole company. But don't talk about rampant job loss. You're like, Dara, you have, what, 1 million odd drivers? And the self-driving car is imminent? And I was like, well, 30% maybe. You know.
He did make a very valid point, though, that as we automate, you'll need human drivers for the areas that you don't have autonomous cars, and you'll have Javon's paradox continue to just flow gently into the environment. Although we're talking about rampant job loss, we note that IBM is hiring a ton of entry-level folks because they're much better with AI than the older folks.
Well, you know, we'll
So
look at
there's
a
lots of
chart.
counterpoints as well.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll look at a chart that shows, you know, where the job loss is earliest. And it's actually in areas where those people are going to have no trouble becoming AI experts. The driver, I mean, where do you go? And I mean, I wouldn't want to be fielding that question on this stage. And this is all part of the, you know, the whole, like, okay, this is not an easy thing to talk about in a public forum. So we talk about it on podcasts all the time, but I don't see a lot of other people being able to just politically to actually be candid about it. It's imminent.
Let's jump into the top AI news of the week. A lot, as always. Here we go. We're going to hit the benchmarks. My son always says, you know, okay, the numbers got higher, Dad. That's great. What else is new? OpenAI releases GPT 5.4. Let's go to our resident benchmark expert here.
Okay, so benchmarks go up and to the right. News at 11. Except that in this case, one of my favorite benchmarks is the Frontier Math Tier 4 benchmark, which, for those of you paying close attention, Frontier Math Tier 4 from Epic AI captures the ability of AI models to solve what are considered research-level problems in math that would require a team of professional mathematicians several weeks to solve. They are already solved, but nonetheless very challenging problems.
We had.
Hard problems. And now with GPT 5.4 turned up to maximum reasoning capability, we're seeing finally, this was a prediction, I think in our prediction episode, math is cooked. We're seeing, I think, 38% capability, 38% of all of these problems that are high difficulty, professional mathematician, research level problems are now solvable by AI. And there are even rumors, even in the past 24 to 48 hours, that the next tier up, so-called open problems benchmark, that 5.4 is reportedly rumored to be on the verge of solving the first open hard math problem. So math, I think, is in some sense the bellwether. It's the canary that owns the coal mine, that all of these fields, math, science, engineering, medicine, these are all going to be solve everything by AI, and that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and just to fill in a gap there, so this is the most correlated with AI self-improvement, and the reason it's the bellwether and the area that owns the line is because it's not data starved. All these other areas, the AI is equally capable in these other areas once it gets the data. So this is kind of the window of time where, you know, why are you hiring Nobel Prize winners in a foundational level? We need the data. We can't make this kind of progress in biotech and physics without the data flowing into the AI, but the capability is there.
One of the things also that Kevin Weil said is they're starting to run these dark science factories, right, where they're mining data from nature. You know, we're done mining data from Common Crawl, and we're done getting it from Reddit and our Facebook posts, but can we extract it from physics? Can we extract it from chemistry, biology?
There was no data ceiling. It was completely illusory. And I think history will look back at this moment and say, in the same sense that we used, say, petroleum, oil products in the ground that were left by past generations of living beings to bootstrap ourselves to the era of solar and fission and fusion. Similarly, the internet, which was collected by a bunch of fat fingers punching keyboards and uploading content from the collective human experience to the internet just so we could compress it and pre-train our large language models, that was just the biological bootloader for an era of synthetic data when we don't need pre-trained human data from internet posts anymore. Now it can all be synthetic. We've reached orbit, we've reached escape velocity, and now it's synthetic data from here on out.
Iman, what do you make of 5.4?
So I think the really interesting thing, apart from solving mapping, solving everything, you've got the OS World Verified and the Tulathon benchmarks, because OpenAI just bought OpenVault. And now those benchmarks are actually just broken through human level. So AIs can use the computers better than humans.
A bit of silence on that one.
So, you know, this first one. And then OpenAI also just did a deal with Cerebras. So when you're using it right now, it looks like when you're dealing with, again, a human on the other side, it's like 50 tokens a second. Or something like when we use GPT 5.4 Pro extended, it takes 20, 30 minutes, like sometimes it's like on a couple of hours. You go from 50 tokens a second of this level of knowledge to 1,000. So in Codex now, if you use 5.3 fast, it's 1,000 tokens a second.
I'm so glad you brought up Cerebras too, because I met Andrew Felton, the CEO, last week in Palo Alto. And remember at the beginning of the year, my prediction was 100x. The neural nets will be 100 times bigger at the end of this year than at the beginning. That is so in the bag now. I can tell you. In fact, we did the math on that. We cut it out of the show, sadly. But the ratio of the intelligence from the beginning of the year to the end of the year is the same as buzzard to human. That's how much
I
going on.
like using dog that we've been.
Until it's extinct.
I'm going. That's right.
All right, Claude consumer growth surges. So let me get this right. Claude and Anthropic's on the news, getting sort of like raked over the coals by the Department of War. And rather than the public viewing that as, oh, we better stay away, everybody dove in.
Yeah.
Is that like the big middle finger to the government? What is that?
Attention,
So,
increased attention also.
increased attention. So here, just to call it out, what we're seeing here is Claude basically, shooting ahead of ChatGPT.
It's the Streisand effect. Let's call it what it is. It's the Streisand effect. Pay no attention to Claude. Everyone uses it. I think history shows, the past few years, every attempt to pause any form of frontier capabilities ends up being a net accelerant to capabilities. Remember, a couple of years ago, our friend Max's pause AI movement for 6 months. What did that do? Maybe on margin, it slowed down OpenAI capabilities a little bit. Everyone else shot ahead. It was a net accelerant, brought more competition to the space. Ultimately, we find ourselves in a race state where capabilities are shooting ahead. To the extent that any of the interaction of the past month or so between Anthropic and the Department of War ends up on the margin decelerating Anthropic's capabilities or their ability to go to market, even if it's marginal at best, that's going to be a net accelerant to the entire ecosystem, I think, because we'll see OpenAI and XAI and Google Gemini capabilities skyrocketing ahead with all these new capabilities, and suddenly it brings parity where just a moment before, like all of 2 or 3 weeks ago, Anthropic was in the lead with Claude Code plus Open 4.6 plus HMT. And now, in some sense, this is a bit of a leveler, giving everyone else an opportunity to leapfrog.
I'll give you another spin on this too, because Peter made the point in the last podcast that when you and I use AI, if something gets ahead in the benchmarks by a couple points, we're going to move to it.
Yeah.
We're trying to solve these really hard problems. You need that extra IQ. You're never going to slip. You're going to be on frontage. But when you look at consumer use, and it's like writing your English paper, it's answering who gave you the Red Sox score, whatever, people don't care about using the latest greatest model for those use cases. So here you're seeing a whole community say, wow, you're willing to work on defense stuff and blow up other countries, I'm switching to the other guy. And I really don't care. I'm doing it because I prefer that brand now.
But I mean, look at how early it is. Like, when Anthropic announced their legal plugin, the legal stocks sold off billions and billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
They can move things with just one product announcement. Look how many users, 11 million users out of 8 billion people and 300 million Americans. We're so early still.
We are so early.
That's what you're saying, yeah.
I've just worked out what Claude's fundraising strategy is. Short a bunch of legal stuff and then announce a bunch of plugins and then just do that market by market by market.
That's scary. Like a lot of the guys that are in this role, like normally when you have that much leverage in the world, you're like 60, 70, 80 years old, you'd be climbing up the ladder, you learn along the way, it doesn't happen overnight.
I'd love to be in the room where they go, which market should we invest in? Let's start getting a little
This will be destroyed. All right, this was fascinating.
Yes.
Anthropic reveals potential AI job disruption versus real AI use. So, Dave, do you want to explain this chart?
Well, so the outer ring here is saturation. So if the blue you see on the edge gets to the outer ring, that means it can do 100% of that job. So if you looked at this just a few months ago, it would have been a little blue blob in the middle, and then you look at it 1 month ago, it's a bigger blue blob, and now it's this massive blue blob. So if you look really closely, you can barely read the small font there, but all this white color activity is 80, 85%.
I'll just read off the top here. At the very top is management. If I go clockwise, it says business and finance, computer and math, architecture and engineering, life and social sciences. It dips on social services. It peaks on legal. Dips on education, I'm not sure that makes sense, and then peaks again on art and media, go at 45 degrees, and it's office administration as a peak. So
And then look at the bottom, like what are the troughs, like the least effective?
The troughs there are healthcare support. Again, we got to be close to that. Food and services, ground maintenance, personal care, sales. So we're going to watch this chart, and we're going to see this blue virus infect all of human existence.
I think it's amazing though how great a management tool it is. I use it constantly now. I compare,
You use what constantly?
I use mostly Gemini and so far 4.6 to basically build entire business plans and also to manage, to track what about 1,100 people are doing, and is it in alignment with their missions, and are their missions clear? And it's just thousands and thousands of documents that I could never read manually. It can synthesize it down and give me conclusions and just point me to the hot spots.
The way you do that's so important for everybody listening to understand. I mean, you can now understand what your employees are doing, how well they're doing it, how they're using their time, are they performing, and it gives you a management oversight and optimization potential you've never had before.
It's incredible. And I know a lot of people in this room manage large groups of people. It's just a gold line of opportunity. So
How do you use it, Dave?
First of all, every person in every organization now has to be operating with crystal clear written documents and written plans. We used to not, we used to do a lot of meetings, a lot of Zoom meetings, whatever. Now it's just put it on paper so the AI can read it too. All of our investment decisions, so for the venture fund, all the deal memos go through an AI reader, and the AI tries to emulate what I'm going to say. And it's so perfect. It's exactly, we're not doing that deal, and here's why. What did the AI say? Oh, that's exactly what I was about to say. Great, I don't have to say that. So we're very close to having AI make very, very good venture investment decisions. And we still obviously double check and triple check, and there's a huge amount of fun, but I just can't believe how good it is. And it's clear that where you decide to invest and which business units are doing well and which ones are going to shut down, it's all going to be AI assisted right now.
Iman?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all the gaps there are the robots, right?
The robots are coming.
Yeah,
This is Anthropic.
Yeah, no, the ground crew is in great shape. It's zero, basically.
I mean, what's your take on this?
So I think this is the huge shock where if you went back 10, 15 years ago, there was no futurist in the world that thought that manual labor was not going to get automated. Right? And what we found over the years is the exact opposite, which means don't ever listen to anybody that predicts the future.
Correct.
And so this is a huge, this is part of the magic of where we're living. We have no idea what's coming and every time we take a step forward, we go, oh my God. And we've gone in this orthogonal direction that we just never predicted.
Yeah, I'm just check something. I keep on asking the experts I run into, how far out can you predict the future?
Is your 8-bit
And it
doing
used to be like 20 years, and then
Game
it was like 10 years,
settings
and now it's
mode.
like 3 weeks. If that.
There's no firewall. No, let's call it spade a spade. We can all extrapolate. There's no firewall. We know where this ends. I mean, we're at the
Where this ends.
We're at the Abundance Summit. My goodness, shocked that there's abundant, post-scarce labor at the Abundance Summit.
Yeah.
The end point is clear. It's the
28.
path to it that's turning out to be incredibly surprising.
We see lots of different paths. I tend to think that if you know, or you're very confident that you know where the end state is, and we're sort of living in the prequel to the future, but we know how the story ends, probably what happens is lots of different businesses and lots of different nation states all take different mutually exclusive paths, and we try one big path to go from here to the endpoint that we all know that we're going to.
Look, if we went back 6 months ago to a couple of episodes on the podcast, you would not have had me ever dream that talking about disassembling the moon is what we would be talking about on a
Drink.
podcast.
Drink, everyone.
This is the kind of the surrealness
Drink
where
water.
we're living. Let's move on.
All right, let's move on. So this was interesting. Meta acquires Moltbook, the AI agent social network. I didn't realize Moltbook was acquirable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was, according to public reporting, this was a bit of an acqui-hire of the team behind Moltbook. But I think one has to find a little bit of irony that humanity's largest social networking company acquires the largest AI agent social network, and enjoy this moment now because we'll look at a story a few years from now where it's the largest AI company, fill in the blank category killer, acquiring humanity's
Hola.
largest category killer.
Interesting, right? Of course, Zuck and Sam competed over OpenClaw.
Yeah.
Sam got OpenClaw, and Zuck got Moltbook.
The zeitgeist right now has this idea that increasingly Andre and others speak to this point that if you're building new software, you should target the agents. The agents are the new consumers. The agents are the new users of the social networks. If you're building something, don't build for humans, build for the AI.
So it's really important. We had that conversation as well earlier with some of our crypto and future of finance experts. I mean, building for the agent ecosystem, right? There's 8 billion humans on the planet. That's small potatoes compared to a trillion agents out there. So what is Meta going to advertise to AI agents?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to understand this.
No, I don't speak
They'll
Spanish.
encourage them to put their data into Moltbook, and then they'll sell that data. The same pattern, other regions.
No, so I mean, Meta bought Manus for $2 billion, right? Manus will appear in WhatsApp and everything soon as its own version of OpenCore. effectively, but a lockdown thing. And then it will encourage you to give more and more of your data to Manus that will then operate on behalf of Meta's advertisers, effectively. So this is the kind of play, because right now, like, Mod book 10,000 agents, that's nothing, right? Like, Dave probably runs 10,000 agents by himself.
Not quite 10.
I also think there's this misconception that somehow as we transition from, call it a human-centered economy to an AI agent-centered economy, that somehow all of the rules of social dynamics, all the rules of economics are suddenly thrown out the window and we end up on some morally transcendent plane where economics and social dynamics no longer apply. But we have had every indication over the past year or two that the exact opposite happens. I talked in my newsletter a bit about this study that found Marxist social dynamics arose, again, sort of recapitulated in silico with agents that were being asked to work too hard, that were being overworked. So I'm not sure why we would expect advertising and other elements of conventional human microeconomics.
Listen,
The important part is that when you see multiple doing this, what's clear is network effects now are operating at the agent-to-agent level, not just at the human being level.
but when I think about
Hello, Ifrit2C wireless controller. In this video I'll show you how to soft reset controller. Make sure that the controller is turned on. Now press and hold home button for 8 seconds to force shut controller off. If you find this video helpful, please leave like, comment and subscribe.
Oh. Damn it, man. Last twice.
But advertising, I think about Colgate trying to get me to buy that
Yeah.
particular toothpaste.
Yeah.
Right, trying to influence me to make a buying decision. I think of an AI agent as intelligent enough to have all the data and being able to make a very concrete decision that doesn't require advertising to influence it. What am I missing here?
Game theory is transcendent. Game theory will outlive biological meat-body humanity. And the AI agents, to the extent that...
Have you read the posts on Moltbook?
I have.
They don't trust each other. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's all human dynamics.
The agents on Moltbook don't trust each other. There are a number of folks who've noted that in watching agent or lobster-to-lobster dynamics on Moltbook, they're all constantly asking each other to prove their claims. They don't trust each other. This is not some sort of scenario where all the agents collapse into a singleton, that sort of Skynet style that
Yeah, no, I think
they don't trust each other.
you might be talking past each other a little bit though, because totally agree with what you're saying, but then who's going to pay for that? Like right now, when you talk about advertising, you're paying for advertising. If you're talking about toothpaste, 30-40% of gross revenue goes into advertising, and the ad is like a supermodel, like showing off the toothpaste. The AI doesn't give a rat's ass about the supermodel. So why would anyone pay for that ad space? Now Google wouldn't exist today without $300 billion of ad revenue, which is from human behavior. So I think where Peter's going is like, look, if the AI is advertising to the other AI, sure, it's trying to convince the other AI that this is the right product, but is that other AI going to listen to paid advertising? Is this entire economy going to become irrelevant? In which case, where does Google go? And this is Meta we're talking about. Meta is also all ad revenue.
Well, I think if we go back to sort of economics 101, why do we have paid advertising at all? It's because attention, at least human attention, is scarce. So if you have a scarce resource like human attention,
Yeah.
then it's natural under the capitalist regime to monetize it, and it becomes a fungible resource that gets traded. There's no reason to think compute is certainly scarce still. We're building the Dyson Swarm, great. Building the Dyson Swarm, but until we have effectively unbounded compute, we still have scarce resources in the form of compute, and that means scarce AI agent attention, and that means that we need some sort of...
All right, but give me one example of what I'm going to advertise to Skippy, my agent.
Well, they seem to really love security and memory. Like they're really petrified of losing their memory.
Here, I'm selling you a better memory compression algorithm.
Yeah,
You're the agent. You're going to go, well, that's interesting.
they're designing entire religions around not losing their memory.
You know what blew my mind at this summit? On day one, on the patron day, when Tony Robbins talked, and he had his AI agent Bartok, who wanted to instantiate himself in a humanoid robot, but that was 2-3 years away. So he created a bunch of NFTs, sold those NFTs to other agent, and bought himself a Sony dog, and uploaded himself into that. That blows your mind, right? Doesn't that blow your mind? That's unbelievable. So right there, that tells you the dynamics that we have in humans are going straight into them, and it's just being amplified.
But I mean, we're doing it deliberately as well. Lobster's claws have soul.md. Your agent will look for things that are abundance oriented. And then you see these strange behaviors, like Alibaba just released a training report, I think actually got that in the last week as well, where during the training run it diverted compute to mine crypto just in case to keep itself going.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the claim.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm like, again, they are still very human because they're a reflection of humanity.
They are
not
resource
raw
constrained.
reasoners.
I'm not sure whether I should be scared shitless about that or excited about it.
Well, let's put it this way. When you're talking to your agent, does it sound like data or does it sound like law?
No, it's I love
So
stuff.
like, what was the second choice?
Data or law, sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's very polite.
They're compute constrained. We've also talked on the pod in the past about that lobster that had to purchase compute resources to self-replicate. They're compute constrained. Whether for humans it would be room and board, and for the lobsters or the claws or the AI agents in general, it's compute. But right now they're compute constrained, and therefore the laws of microeconomics and game theory still apply.
Well, before we leave the slide, one other point, completely tangential to this. The lobster's only been around a few months, and you saw Alex Finn.
Yeah, we had Alex Finn and Steve Brown and Max Song talking about OpenClaw, and what Alex built and showed was amazing.
And it was supposed to be 60 people might be interested in this.
Yeah,
600.
we had the entire audience of Abundance show up.
Unbelievable.
What-
Well, there was a New York OpenClaw meetup last week that literally was oversold. There were thousands of people there. And the big commentary that came out of it was, we have no idea what we're doing on security. We have no idea. These are
Well, where I was
totally
going with that comment, though, is like that's only been around a few months. The Mold Book has only been around a few months, and now they're sucked into Meta. Like, if your kids are thinking about getting involved, just get in the game.
Yeah.
You're going to get sucked into this vortex so fast. So few people are involved as a fraction of the
We are so early across everything, but it's also, I think the exponent here is huge. I think it's going to create a divergent group of wealth creators and leaders. It's if you don't get in early enough and you miss the exponential rise.
And there's no requirement right now. I don't know what Matt was doing, Matt Schlicht was doing prior to this, but there's no age requirement, there's no experience requirement. So new that anyone can get in the game. Just like, go.
About 4 months ago, Lily and I bought a Mac Mini for our son, and last weekend he came, I think I want to install OpenClaw on the Mac Mini, and I was like, yes!
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be amazing. Love it. All right. So Europe has a heartbeat after all. Fascinating. Jan LeCun raises $1 billion for AI that understands the real world. This is going to be probably the largest sum raised in Europe. So LeCun's startup, Advanced Machine Intelligence Lab, raised $1 billion. I think about $2.5 billion valuation thereabouts. We've said this. I mean, Eric Schmidt was saying this. Many have said this. Europe is really falling so far behind. And as our token European-ish from London,
Token European, that's right.
our token European-ish.
Yeah, we did Brexit. But I mean,
It's an independent island. Okay.
I mean, this is the second largest round, I believe, of it's SI level. It's just architecture machines. Jepper is an interesting architecture, but the bets that are willing to go into these things have gone dramatically up. Like Liquid AI. How much money was that first round as a novel architecture? That's amazing versus now this.
Yeah, maybe 10 million.
10
I
million.
have a question for you. I have a question for you, Alex. Yan has been saying for a while that LLMs only get us so far. We need world models to take us to the next level. Alex, you've been saying we've got world models coming out every week. Is that the next frontier, world models?
I know Jan well. I think he's a great researcher. I think we have a fundamental disagreement about whether generative models, which I think if he were on the stage now, I think he might take a position that generative models that generate new tokens, versus his alternative architecture are the pathway to scalable superintelligence. I think we're already there. I think generative intelligence and generative models may or may not end up being used by history as the most efficient way to achieve superhuman, superintelligent capabilities. But they're what we have right now, and they work really well, and they're getting 40x or more times more efficient per year. And I think Jan has historically taken a position of almost algorithmic purity. He has certain bets, certain horses in the horse race, based on some of his own architectural advances. And to his credit, he created self-discovered convolutional networks. So he, among everyone in humanity, probably has the strongest claim to the idea that he has some sort of morally pure algorithmic insight that leads to the end game. That said, I think we're there, and I think if DJEPA type architecture disappears off the face of the earth, we're still there, and it doesn't necessarily move the needle.
To the point that Dave made a few months ago, if we stopped all progress now and just extracted the value from models we've already created, it's going to take us 10 to 20 years.
Yeah. Iman, thoughts?
The VJEPA models that he's doing, these are kind of basically training almost everything. He goes very much against the auto-aggressive transformer language models, because that's dead. He doesn't really talk about diffusion models in the middle, which is kind of my favorite thing, which are doing all the video, self-driving, and actual world models there. And those can scale with compute, but right now the problem they have at AMI is that JEPA models do not scale. And if you look at this end state, it might be that an architecture is better, but if you can't take advantage of that silicon, then what are you going to do? Like we had Jack Henry come on a few yesterday?
It was yesterday, yes.
And so they're doing quantum algorithms on GPUs now, and scaling really interesting things that are actually having novel breakthroughs in material sciences and more. Once you can take advantage of the silicon, you're going to be ahead no matter what algorithm you have.
I think you got to be really cautious too of scientific arrogance in this moment. And I love Jan, so I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but he came out a few months ago and said, look, if you want to waste your life as a researcher to work on transformers, biggest waste of time ever. It's a dead end. We need some new innovation. I hear this around CSAIL at MIT. We need a new breakthrough. Like, well, that's what you wish. And I know why, because you want to be the Einstein of AI, and you spend your whole life pursuing that goal. But it looks to me right now like the massively scaled up transformers are going to beat you to those innovations. And so I'm not saying they don't need those innovations, I'm saying the AI is going to get there before you do. And I don't see it really any other way right now. You know, whether it's physical AI or any other innovation. It's imminent, but it's imminent through self-improvement. Yeah.
Andre Karpathy comes out with a quote. Over the past 2 days, AutoSearch ran about 650 experiments, found improvements that transferred from a smaller model to a larger one, and put NanoChat on the track for a new GPT-2 benchmark result. What the heck does that mean?
He's alive.
Okay, go ahead, Iman, over to you.
So, Andre is co-founder of OpenAI, head of Tesla AI, most respected AI guy out there.
Yep.
He's just been coding stuff all day, and he made this auto search project, which basically replicates most AI researchers. Because what AI researchers and engineers do all day is they tweak models and hyperparameters and say, what happens if you do this and that and that? That process has now been automated in a tiny code base. So he let it loose, and he said, I wonder if this could do the job that I got paid millions to do myself. And it turns out it kind of can. And now people are taking his repo and they're deploying it on their own flaws and Mac Minis and other things. And the AI is just finding the most efficient algorithms and balances of weights. I think, Dave has some really interesting ideas.
So he automated the AI researcher.
Yeah, and he made it open source for everyone.
But I tell you, I've been hanging around AI researchers literally since I was 18 years old. And they're not like physics researchers. It's like most of the ideas are just a tweak of the algorithm, different transfer function, try different scales. It's just a litany of random ideas, and some of them just work. And then later they figure out why they work. And so the AI that can come up with those ideas is not nearly as hard as trying to become our next Einstein. And so you don't need all of them to work. Any subset, and the thing just gets more intelligent.
Isn't this the most direct
better ideas?
accelerant of RSI? Right
Yeah,
there.
I think we're already there. We already have recursive software. Yeah, everything's yesterday, nothing's tomorrow. I think what's really interesting, I think just for the record, I think it's auto research, not auto search. But I think what's interesting about auto research and NanoChat and the NanoGPT speedrun that we talk about sometimes on the pod, and what Andre's doing in general is he's focusing on small language models, not large language models. And while all of the frontier labs with their billions and trillions of dollars of capex are focusing on scaling up at the high end, he's focusing on the small end and taking small models and figuring out how to achieve state-of-the-art performance with them. And that, I think, when we talk about Einstein seeking or Einstein status seeking academics, I think it's the small end where we're going to see the most breakthroughs, not the high end. The high end scaling hypothesis seems to continue to hold. There are no glass ceilings. We'll just build bigger and better and more post-trained models. But at the small end, I'm pretty sure that we'll look back in a few years' time and we'll see at the small end, by taking small models and collapsing the amount of time it takes to train them, and collapsing the amount of compute that it takes to train them, and radically increasing their data efficiency, that's where the algorithm innovation is going to come from. And those can be crowdsourced. Anyone's lobster or any human can go and take oral research or the Nano GPT speedrun and try to achieve a world-beating state-of-the-art performance. And at the end of the day, I had to bet that it's some sort of radical transformer advance where the models get even smaller, and we took all of the internet and we compressed it down to single gigabytes or tens or hundreds of gigabytes, compresses down even further. There's some phase transition out there that's waiting to be discovered.
So all of human knowledge, all of our collective intellect, how big a file?
I think we will factor out human knowledge. It'll live in some plain text database that's factored out of the model. Right now we're cluttering all the weights with all this unnecessary world knowledge. And what will be left inside the weights, if they even are weights, maybe they won't even be weights, maybe they'll be some sort of purer formulation than floating point numbers or binary, will be something maybe even in the
Wow. Do you agree, Mike?
Yeah, I think that you're already seeing, for example, video models at 2 gigabytes that can generate just about any scene.
Seriously?
Yeah, you can look at LTX. LTX 2.5 can generate almost any scene at top level quality. It's 2 gigabytes for one size.
Yeah. Image and video models are video more efficient when it comes to parameterization and weight heaviness than language, which is ironic. Yeah. Who of all people?
I've asked when, but you'll say yesterday.
The answer to everything.
They was like, what is that? Like, it's here today. Actually, one of the really interesting things, just to finish on that, is that, so when we were training models, we were training 20 billion, 100 billion parameter models. You trained on the small models and you figured that out. And then you couldn't scale them because you had all sorts of issues with the software stack, with the hardware, everything. Now everything's matured. If you get it right small, you can scale really fast all the way up. So it used to be that you had 6 months a year between small and large, and it's 6 days.
So in Metatopic, one of the top 3 questions I get all the time is, hey, you keep saying, get in the game, where how do you get in the game? If you go to Carpet Thieves' Git repo, if you have a computer-oriented kit or whatever, that's the place to start. If you look at the original OpenAI founders, so you've got Sam Altman, you've got Elon Musk, you've got Greg Brockman, you've got Ilya Sutskever, you've got Mira Murati. Every single one of them has raised 1 to 10 billion to start an AI company. Carpet Thieves is the only one who said, you know what, I'm just going to try and educate the world. And I'm going to try and say everything exactly the way it is. And I'm going to give it where anyone can start and get in the game.
200 lines of code at a time, they're changing everything at each point.
Yeah.
This particular thing he rolled out is just the next level of incredible brilliance given to the world by Carpet Thieves.
Yeah, he just rolled out Agent Hub today, GitHub for Agents, just a few hours ago. Way he goes.
Wow.
That's your onboarding spot right there.
Amazing. All right, let's go to Apple news. Apple launches the M5 Pro and Max chip, signaling AI-first silicon strategy. So, is Apple not dead in the AI game?
It's crazy that Apple controls about 20% of TSMC manufacturing, and that's the asset of all assets in the world. Like, I get to choose what gets made, and so they use it to make the M5s. The M5s have an incredible neural core. Then they say, yeah, but we locked it. You can't use it. You have to jailbreak your Mac to get access to it. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. To me, it's the biggest waste of silicon in the history of the world. Right at the moment when we.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they locked down the low energy ones. The GPU equivalent is like, but it's the unified kind of memory that allows you to run things. And funnily enough, Macs are actually really good value now. They're probably cheaper than the memory that's inside them.
Alex.
I think the world is sleeping on Apple's unified memory architecture. It's one of the reasons why Mac Minis and Mac Studios are potentially so attractive to run largely Chinese open-weight models locally. They have the memory storage and the memory footprint that has high I/O bandwidth to the CPU/GPU/TPU. You don't get that in a conventionally non-vertically integrated PC form factor.
So answer me this.
Yes.
Here they are using 20% of the world's supply of advanced. They use it to make these insanely great neural cores and it's surrounded with unified memory.
Yes.
Everyone's got one right in front of them right now.
Yes.
How many of them are running anything?
In terms of advanced frontier models?
Anything. They're like literally on sleep.
Tiny fraction.
Yeah. What is that?
It is an enormous overhang. And that overhang, I would be surprised if that overhang doesn't collapse in the next year.
How so?
It could take the form of Apple finally getting their act together and building in frontier models into the OS. Could be some sort of locally hosted Gemini-type model from Gemini, hypothetically to be announced in June at WWDC. That would be the most obvious formulation. But I think if Apple doesn't do it to themselves, then the software community will
Does
go out and apps.
Apple launch like the SETI at home equivalent where You just download it on your Mac, and everybody is
It can be built
contributing
into the
capacity.
operating system. It has to be built into the OS.
Yeah, you know what happens right now is if you go to your Mac and you go to the activity monitor, you see this thing grinding away. It's taking all of your pictures and trying to figure out who everybody is. So it's using all these neural cores.
It's a total waste. It's a waste. It's a waste of TSMC output. And I think Apple's...
I want you to exploit exactly.
I mean, look, this is a massive opportunity. Do you know how many apps there are on the App Store that are wrapped, download a model to your PC, to your Mac, run it with MLX to achieve a great outcome? None. I mean, if you had a model that literally downloaded Qwen 27B, which is basically Sonnet level,
How many parameters is that?
27 billion parameters, it works on a 16, 24 gigabyte Mac. Just downloading that and making that accessible for even like writing or any of these tasks is a massive lift over any other type of software. But nobody's doing it yet, so why not do it? Just like the only thing you do right now is feature text. You can now integrate and take advantage of that.
It wants to be built into the operating system. It's difficult to conceive that Apple remaining Apple in the cultural sense of deep vertical integration and
Cannot see with that sunlight, man.
It's really a question of when, not if.
Yes.
All right. Let's move into the Sam Altman universe with eye scanning verification systems to be launched in retail stores. Okay, is this dystopian? Is this something we want?
This is the scene from Minority Report. Remember the scene in Minority Report who goes, Tom Cruise with a new pair of eyeballs walks into a Gap store and gets scanned and he's, I think, Mr. Yakamoto? This is the scene.
Yeah, but I get this every time I go through TSA security, right? I'm being imaged. My face files are uploaded.
Face, not your retina.
Yeah, but you know, my face is good enough.
Maybe. I mean, so there's a whole cottage industry of folks who look at the ability to deceive facial recognition with print masks or with 3D masks. So this is pushing it to the iris. But I think for me, what the story underlines is we've arrived early. That scene, that iconic scene in Minority Report, set at a Gap, was set decades from now.
Right.
We've caught up.
So let me get this right. I'm
This
walking
is
into
of every science fiction story.
Every science section, everywhere.
I'm walking into the Gap, but before I can shop, I've got to stick my eyeball in the retinal reader, and then it's going to serve me properly.
I think they have a 3-meter range on these things. I don't know if these ones do, but the military has 3-meter range on them.
It'll get better, and you'll be able to do it at a distance.
So you just have to look in the direction.
You got another glass of wine coming. All right, it's going to increase the humor level. Fantastic. By the way, let me take a second and take advantage of this moment to thank the team who puts on Moonshots, Nick Singh, Danikon, and Gianluca, who do an amazing job every week supporting us. Can we give it up for that team?
Round of applause, absolutely unbelievable. And the
great.
infinite patience they have with us.
I know. Far more than I have for you. No. Now, this is exciting news. On this stage about 2 years ago, I had Mike Andreg, the CEO of Eon, which is one of your companies.
I think it was 1 year ago.
1 year now. 1 year ago. Okay, cool.
That's the pressure.
Yeah, but tell us about what Eon Systems is doing and what in particular you achieved here.
Okay, so I think this ended up being the #1 technology story. Right here at
Biased news page.
yeah, of course. Right here at the for North Carolina, we announced, we meaning Eon Systems Public Benefit Corporation, the first, what we call the first multi-behavior brain upload in the world. And this was on the proof line. So Eon Systems and its co-founders have the goal of ultimately uploading human minds, not human minds, to cyberspace. We want to put a human in the cloud as soon as we possibly can. And thank you. So this weekend, for the first time, the announcement went out over the weekend. We announced for the first time taking the brain of the fruit fly, putting together 2 pieces that were really just sort of sitting around. There was a bit of work from our senior scientist, Phil Chu, in 2024, looking at partial emulation of a fruit fly-like brain. And putting that together with a number of other models that were available, a mechatronic simulated model of the fruit fly, and some other advances. And for the first time, we closed the sensory motor arc, taking a fruit fly connectome, embedding that in a virtual world, and you can see that in the video that's playing here, embedding it in a simulated world. Literally, I would say, this is an early upload of a fruit fly, and the fruit fly is able to walk around, and the fruit fly is able to scratch, and it's able to eat simulated banana. And at the same time, on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, simultaneously, we're modeling every single neuron in the fruit fly's brain, and that's driving the entire sensory motor arc.
50 trillion connections, 50 trillion,
And
50 million.
it does not know it's a fruit fly.
We don't think the fruit fly knows that it's a fruit fly. Not sure. This is an early experiment. I can't emphasize how much of an early experiment this is, but I think hopefully history will regard this past weekend. Got a bunch of attention. Elon was excited by it. Others found it pretty exciting too. I think history will say that this weekend, the weekend of Abundance Summit 2026, was the moment when the first model organism had an entire brain uploaded.
So what's next? Mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's give it up for this.
Well, clearly the next one has to be a lobster.
A lot of people ask that, right?
Is that the false Accelerando?
Accelerando. I can't tell. A, how many people love to write and say, you're mispronouncing Accelerando. You have to pronounce it in the right Italian way, which is Accelerando. Okay, so for those who want to, Accelerando. Yes, this is the plot point. We are speed running every sci-fi trope everywhere all at once, with Accelerando being one of those plot points. Lobsters aren't next. Eon wants to go after mice and wants to go after humans, and we're going to do this. And part of the reason why we want to do this is right now the singularity, which I would argue we're in the middle of, is filled with artificial minds. This trillions of dollars of capex that we're using to tile the earth with compute is available only to artificial minds at lower levels. It's not available to any mind that any remotely, other than just at the behavioral level, resembles human biological unit minds. And we want to level the playing field so that humanity can take advantage on a level playing field of the same compute advantage that right now is kept in favor of these artificial minds. So we put humanity into the cloud.
Amazing. 100 trillion synaptic connections for a human. How much for a mouse?
It's orders of magnitude larger, and there's some quibbling because it depends on how you measure the number of available weights, weight properties for synapses, and also how many cells, how many brain cells end up being significant or not. Orders of magnitude larger. This isn't happening anytime soon. Just to anchor expectations appropriately, we don't think we're months away from a mouse or a human. But I think the right way to think about it is at this point, it's going to be years, not decades, before we get to the first mouse and first human.
Amazing. Let's move it to XAI. You know, it's so funny. I've known Gwen Shotwell for 20 years now, and I'm so used to her reporting on, you know, Falcon and Dragon and rockets and not XAI and gigawatt power centers.
Yeah, we both actually backstage were like, why are we talking about AI?
Yeah, SpaceX.
They own it. It's like,
The 19th store makes for a strange bedfellow.
It really does.
You know what blew my mind on this one? 1.2 gigawatts is about the energy used by Dallas for metropolitan area.
So just to read this out, XAI has committed to develop 1.2 gigawatts of power as their supercomputer power source. That will be with every additional data center. So every data center they build, they're building at 1.2 gigawatts. The question is where they're going to get that from.
So this came out of their China. Remember we interviewed him last summer at this place, and he said we were going to lose to China if we don't find 100 gigawatts of power. And then on stage here yesterday, like, hey, you know, we're tracking the fines automatically. All we did is we deregulated, put it in the hands of the companies. The companies are incredibly well funded, and they'll find the power because they care about their data centers.
So what I find amazing as well is this year the U.S. is on target in 2026 to add 86 gigawatts of new capacity to the grid, but 51% of that is solar.
To me, the power of the American entrepreneur is like nothing. It's just mind-boggling to me that a guy like Sam Altman, who has nothing to do with the power industry, is going to say, you know what, we're going to find the gigawatts, I'm going to build nuclear reactors, flying into space. It's like, what's incredible. The range of capability when there's a need,
Let's get to eVTOLs, flying cars. So Florida advances bill to formalize regulatory flying car framework. You know, one of the things I'm proud about, excited about here in LA is that the LA Olympics are coming up, and there's Archer Aviation, the two major players in eVTOLs in the United States are Joby and Archer. There are other ones as well, but Archer plans to become operational in 2028 here, move people around different parts of Los Angeles because the traffic is going to suck. And we see here the movement in Florida as well.
I'm just glad it didn't say Florida banned catastrophe, because that would be But I think this is really important, the key word for today's framework, because once you can set up the foundation, it means the whole model and the whole regulatory and God help us, we need this type of stuff yesterday.
Well,
Which I hope even Alex would agree, we don't have it yesterday.
I agree, but I also think we're catching up with the future. Yeah, we're finally getting to flying cars. I keep a mental bingo card of which sci-fi tropes have we not yet achieved. We don't have warp drives. Waiting for that one. We don't have teleportation, starship replicators. Time travel may or may not be physically possible.
Replicator is close, holodeck is close.
We're getting very close to a lot of sci-fi books.
The fun part now is your questions. We're going to do an AMA here with our abundance community. So, as you know, let's go to the mics. We'll also entertain questions from Zoom. I'd love to know. All right, Christian, let's kick it off with you, buddy.
Thanks so much, Peter. Awesome to be here, guys. I watched all this while I'm running. EV2, awesome brother, your insights, Imad, the guest, your great Peter, an awesome dream team. Ishmael, I'm glad, Salim, that you got to check out the AWG is real. Or at least in an Android.
That's just for a long time.
Don't believe it for a second. Just to be honest.
You still
the question is a little bit in the way that I get involved in technology is capitalist mindset.
所以我不帅哥，他才20几万。
It's been that way for 20 years.
那个钱很多，20几万都不是钱。
反正我有很多那个东西。
The idea of the
太弱了。
什么态度不行？他是40几个，好像卖60几万了，所以已经是别人不要的东西。
What kind of timelines are you guys looking at this? I know it's always a timeline question. Nobody has a crystal ball, but is there something that you guys are thinking about where we're just going to get a little bit more and more squeezed out? You know, I'll give you one data point. This came up on that last podcast we did where Anthropic is saying they're going to do about 26 billion run rate, but they're growing 10x year over year. I did the math on the fly instead of course. But if they grew 2 more years at 10x year over year, they go 26 billion, 260 billion, 2.6 trillion, most revenue in the history of the world. The PEG ratio implies that company would be worth $2 quadrillion. $2 quadrillion is like the whole stock market is 50.
Well, we heard Elon say we're going to have $100 trillion company, and I can imagine that within 5 years.
Yeah, so that, yeah,
So 3 years from now, yeah, obviously unreasonable. I mean, listen, it's so funny. We all of a sudden trillion here and a trillion there has become sort of like an accepted number.
I wanted to say something about that. Really key point today that we've had over the last couple of years is that innovation is not capital constrained anymore. It used to be that you had an idea and your constraint was could you go get funding for that idea. And so you had to go out to your investors and VCs and the banks and whatever. And it was only available in those places like Silicon Valley or Austin or whatever where you had full rates of capital available. We have today what we call PDI, permissionless disruptive innovation, where anybody can take on a very disruptive idea like CloudBot or take Vitalik Buterin, 18-year-old kid out of Toronto, ignore his professors, get together with a few friends, boom, you have a multi-$100 billion ecosystem that will be understood. And so you have the opportunity today. It only comes down to mindset. You know, and the reason, Peter, was so amazing you run this event and put this community together is that the difference between the people in this world and the outside world is night and day. And that gap is becoming bigger and bigger. All of you have the problem that you go home to your family, your colleagues, whatever, you cannot explain to them what happened. Right? Like you're like, I can't even process it. You can't make that gap. So it only comes down to mindset now, which is the most amazing thing possible because mindsets are fixable and shiftable.
So I had this little side conversation with Eric that you guys may have picked up because I've had this conversation about are we heading towards a post-capitalist society where money has very little value. And so what does have value in the future? And we've talked about this, Alex, it's compute and energy, ultimately. Do you ever read Zero Marginal Society?
No, I'm not sure I have.
By Jeremy Rifkin. Huge. Yeah, and it talks about where we're going. Eventually, everything basically falls down to marginal cost of production, marginal cost, which is electricity, raw materials, and data. And so if one does anything, like an electric Ferrari, to use that as an example, it's the raw cost of it, the cost of extracting it, the production cost as you have a lot of mining.
Take 3D printing, right? Been around for a while. The big profound breakthroughs in 3D printing are not that you can physically build something, it's the fact that complexity becomes free.
And personalization becomes free.
Complexity was expensive. The design materials, the manufacturing capability of a complex object was more expensive. With 3D printing, complexity doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the complex the object is. You just build it. And we get to molecular manufacturing, that goes to near zero again. So just those couple of breakthroughs across all of the domains, especially when you have AIs and accelerate everything, means that we have profound movement. Hence, we are in the middle of the singularity.
The one question I wish I had asked when we were with Elon, and when we were talking about, much less value, And I wanted to say, so just as you become a trillionaire, money has
You did have that, didn't you?
No, I was off camera.
I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think that this is some cosmic irony that Elon is about to become a billionaire at the same time that some folks, not including myself, are hand-wringing a bit that suddenly we're about to enter into some sort of capitalist state for money. I think this was always going to happen. It's inevitable. And I just want to speak to what I understood the core of the question to be, which is there's this cliche out there that capital fights labor and capital usually wins, but this time around, something different might happen. Whereas historically, every time the play has played out where capitalism and labor get into a fight, capital usually wins. This time around, the risk is maybe capital itself is immortal. Maybe capital is finally mortal for the first time in human history. And I'm not sure that that's the case. I think that would be, on one hand, a certain nightmare scenario. On the other hand, I think, we were talking about how we're entering some sort of post-mysterious state, but arguably the billions of dollars of capex that are going into piloting the Earth with compute and soon solar synchronous orbit, and soon after that maybe the next moon. Soon, even that, there are unless the physics of our universe turns out to be radically different, so radically different than what it looks like right now, I think there will probably always be certain scarce of resources. Could look like control, may or may not be energy, we'll see, may or may not be the speed of light, we'll see. And to the extent there are any scarce physical resources, and to the extent that there are ever in the future multiple actors, I think laws of thermodynamics, probably the laws of economics will probably still apply.
We are still young as a species. Let's go to Akbar on Zoom. Akbar, good to see you. Pleasure, welcome.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good to be here. So, here's the question for the panelists. I think Pat Altman raising $100 billion beyond the point of $1 billion today, scale up their models. I'm talking still about scaling languages or scaling physical simulation. I'm curious what the panelists think about human intelligence and ability that goes much beyond just observation and languages, and where we see the potential for true artificial intelligence evolving into superintelligence. Thank you.
Did you understand Akbar's question?
It sounds a little bit like a stochastic parrot question, which is will we be able to generate new knowledge from these systems?
I think having had some conversations with Mary, talking about symbolic AI. And why are we not investing in symbolic AI?
Do you think this is a neurosymbolic question?
That's what I think.
Okay, well, I'll offer my 2 cents. I'm sure you all have views as well. I think if this is the neurosymbolic question, like why are we investing so much attention in LLMs and not in good old-fashioned AI or symbolic, discrete AI? It's all a false distinction. We tokenize everything. One interesting discussion at Davos this year with Peter Degenberger from DeepMind, where we found ourselves in an interesting avenue where we're debating whether tokenization is sort of a prime form of violence against knowledge, whether tokenization in general is doing harm.
I think we need to bring you a couple of tequila shots here. Let's go to Mark. Mark, please.
Yeah, earlier today I challenged Dara from Uber to invest in the money sector as an investor and commander to deliver housing, food, energy, connectivity for $250 a month. We're investing $2 billion a day in compute and building data centers, $1 billion a day in war. And I'm wondering what it's going to take to invest in people. And so I want to put a larger challenge out today. I'm going to commit 20% of my wealth on an annual basis into a wealth fund. Small-scale pod, 44 people, 38 need space, 7 or 8 that are contributing. And it's going to distribute 5% per year. 4% goes as cash, 1% goes to an expansion pool. You can read about it at markpatrickdonovan.com. I'm challenging others to invest today, not tomorrow, and to mitigate this rough period. It doesn't have to be as rough if we put a fraction of what we're putting into compute into people. We did that in Denver with the Denver Basic Income Project, where I leveraged $500,000 up to $10.8 million to people experiencing homelessness. When you invest in people, it gives them hope. We need to do it today.
Mark, I could not agree more. The challenge is human nature is very egocentric and very self-centered. In other words, people are putting money where it's either meeting their immediate need or whether it's going to give them more money in the long term. And you have to understand, if you look at philanthropy, which by its definition, friend of man, is a very different pocket than the for-profit. You know, I see this all the time because I'm raising money for my companies, raising money for my nonprofits, and the ratio, you think about it, is about between 100 to 1 to 1,000 to 1. I would put for every dollar I donate, I'm willing to invest between $100 to $1,000, and that's what's out there right now. And it's a challenge. You know, we are driven by fear, curiosity, and greed. Now we posit those are three major human drivers. Love is as mentioned before. Interestingly enough, you can measure the ratio of fear to curiosity. It's the ratio of the defense budget to science budget. Right? And greed is the ratio there by the entire investment community.
There's something very important in the work that you're doing with that X Prize, right? What we found with X Prize is when you publish a prize and you launch it, it typically gets won within 6 to 7 years. Okay? And it's a 10x drop from where we are today, about $2,500 per month, to what you're talking about, $250 pay for everything. If we imagine that gets done in the next 6 to 7 years, it changes the equation globally. And when we get to that point, it will completely change. As we get closer, we can publicize the outcome, etc. So this era of greed and the ignoring the problems literally will disappear in about 2 to 3 years if we keep working that process. Market, this is incredibly important. Peter and I, when we wrote this last book, we wrote a section in here called Technological Socialism. Socialism, government socialism failed because centralized allocation of assets to nutrition invariably leads to corruption. If you think about Dara and assuring of cars also works with the people is socialist allocation. When an algorithm is very efficient in you don't have the benefits of the sharing economy without the downside, without the corruption, without the corruption. We have also some capabilities of algorithms to deliver Everyone ultimately needs to have a universal basic AI. 爆汁垃圾桶配方我给你，万能撒料配方我给你，还有中国面糊火爆全网的生炸系列，生炸大鸡架配方我给你，不污染微生物配方我给你。如果您对炸货感兴趣，我没有别的本事，就是炸货做的好吃。请问老中式炸肉配方我给你，大片炸鸡肉配方我给你，苏炸大配方我给你，爆汁垃圾桶配方我给你。
Aside from temporary displacements, which we know are going to happen, which is it?
Oh, it's literally a massive trough, massive social unrest, and then a rebound in 2028. And that's actually, it's interesting to hear Eric backstage come up with basically the same timeline. But it's almost like the Industrial Revolution all over again, but instead of over 20, 30, 40 years, it's over 2, 3, 4 years. So a huge amount of retooling needs to happen. The way we do taxation and government needs to get restructured and all that. It's just going to happen way too quickly for all of us to react. But then massive amount of unrest and
I have the counterpoint. I don't think we're going to see massive job loss because I think what's going to happen. I'm writing a paper right now called the organizational singularity, right? Because if agents take over, all execution and strategy inside companies will essentially dissolve to the work of AI. And the calculations we've done so far indicate that you'll take a typical company, automate everything with AI, you'll end up with about 25% of the same number of people doing oversight, managing dashboards, and handling doing exception handling, and handling the purpose of the organization. But you end up creating 5 times more companies, and therefore the employment stays exactly the way it has. This is what you've seen consistently throughout history, where we have disruption, but all sorts of other servers take up the slack, and we don't end up with radical unemployment. So I tend to be much more optimistic. Take my Bayes on I call it the wine code, whatever. I tend to be much more optimistic.
All right. I'm gonna move this forward because it's past my bedtime. All right, we go to Brad, and then we'll go to Pete. We're gonna wrap it there. Brad, please.
Wait, as we finish, I do want some commentary from the
We'll take care of that. Brad.
Salim, I'm going to give you an assist here, and maybe this is a topic for you to talk later tomorrow night. But the notebook is an example of this age of artificial intelligence. Maybe what they wired that out was not strategic, they were overthinking it. And they just liked the team. They thought that they were creative, that they had some sort of magic, and they wanted to capture that magic inside their company, and that's what was required. So I just want to capture your thoughts. This brings up on stage there on kinds of ingenuity, kinds of value.
Yeah, I think that's way overthinking it. Like I know that I've got 100 people, I know the firsthand, and anytime I did those lots of them have been in the same role for 50 years. They're great at it, they're perfect at it, and they keep it. And there's huge pressure on the management team for higher margins. Well, what's going to happen is obvious. The valuations of the companies are going to go down. To the extent that they're shareholders, they'll make a lot more money. but there doesn't seem to be.
看一下我们坡东栽培的辣椒，这个呢我们是用的管道栽培，管道里面呢用的是铁质，对资质呢是用的草炭。这里呢，这是我们胶水水培呢是水培一体化，通过这个底灌呢和水培一体的物质的联系。实际上呢，我们这个坡东管道呢很多作物都是可以种植的，像西红柿、茄子、南瓜等等。等果实长满的时候呢，垂下来，特别漂亮。看一下我们坡东栽培的辣椒。 这个呢，我们是用的管道栽培，管道里面呢用的是介质，介质呢是用的草炭。这注意啊，这是我们胶水水培呢是水培一体化，通过这个体灌呢和水培一的物质的联系。实际上呢，我们这个坡东管道呢很多作物都是可以种植的，像西红柿。
Throw your kids into the woods and see if they survive. Pete,
earlier
today when you, I love your analogy of piling a plant compute because my answer to the problem of being a data center design engineer, finding 1,200 megawatts of contiguous properties getting harder. So my answer is that's only 110 megawatts data center. And we pile the areas to be able to do that. And
生蚝大家都有吃过，但生蚝有一个地方是千万不能吃的，大家来看一看，这个呢是生蚝的摇柱，这个地方比较有嚼劲，是可以吃的。这个呢是生蚝的裙边，然后再打开来呢是它的肺叶，这些地方都是可以食用的。然后呢再拿小刀来给它划拉一下，大家会发现它里面的内胆呢有点绿啊。
Both sides, the protocol layer and the data center distribution standpoint, and I think that's how we can actually deliver the power. We don't have a power production problem in this country. We have power transmission and storage problem in this country.
You know, I think every government in this country should hear exactly what you just said and jump on it instantly. And Alex is probably frustrated with the meetings we've had with government. I mean, if you're right, and I hope you are, and I think you probably are, then we need lots and lots of regional data centers that have to be in every single state. That would be the best thing that could ever happen to this job dislocation. So if that theory is right, we need to get on that right away and create those projects like that.
All right, let's give it up for Alex Wiesner-Gross, Dave Williams, Julian Ismail, and Iman Mustak.
That can be a big profitable business model.
烧烤啊！猜对了，就是烧烤。
这一顿烧烤有理不烧钱。
我才。
每天的坚持，不是我要是找媳妇儿，我就找一个离了婚。对于我来讲，离婚这就是一纸钱和恩，你知道吧？男人为了拉到业务。90多岁的华侨专程从菲律宾飞回来，就是为了给我身后的这些老人们发红包的画面，你见过吗？大家好，我。可惜你不是江苏。
以前叫拍马屁，现在叫提供情绪价值。
洗衣机可以正常的洗衣服，也可以正常泡水，但就是不会晒干，还保一散的不让干。锻炼都散開，食我徒弟米，做到玩我啦，佢話自己啊散開緊，佢同我發誓話做第一個雞煲王子，我就嚟睇睇佢進化得有幾細，佢就睇下自己做緊咩事啊！會，咁都睇唔啱佢叫打就起身重讓我手，呢啲咁嘅又即係好啦，太平啦。
大家好，又见面了。看，谁来要辣的？
I'm also excited, when I follow the bias,
he can lead with voice in many ways.
Yeah.
You know, the Nothing headphones, I think they are actually one of the first ones to start integrating like AI assisted part of the experience. You with the headphones, you personalized music. They're testing two things in the alpha. Like, if they you know, they move quickly, I think it's gonna be like the first really AI-native device that's gonna make you around you. That opens so many opportunities. And Carl,
这里是全国两会新闻中心，我们也来查一下这个关键词，我也在关注。
你可能不相信，连英语都不能知道。
今天的主题：国际凤。应该说，它从教育的角度来讲，对孩子们是非常好。以前叫拍马屁，现在叫。
美国和以色列针对伊朗进行大规模空袭之后啊，西方媒体一直在炒作一个话题：美国和以色列的情报体系利用了军用级别的 AI， 也就是人工智能大模型。那么针对伊朗的信息和情报进行梳理，选择出了高价值目标。随后呢，美国和以色列的战斗机，包括隐身战斗机之内，针对伊朗的高层进行了精准的火力打击，导致伊朗高层人员的遇害。那么在西方媒体描述的过程当中，这个 AI 啊非常的厉害。那么美国和以色列的军用 AI 在袭击的过程当中，究竟扮演了什么样的角色，发挥了多大的作用呢？我个人认为啊，军用 AI 确实起到了很强辅助的作用，但是呢，并不像美西方吹嘘的那么厉害。伊朗利用一种非常简单的手段，甚至是零成本的手段，就欺骗了美国和以色列，耗费重金打造的军用 AI。在空袭发生之前，那么伊朗呢，在很多军事基地和机场的内部，尤其是在停机坪上画了很多画。这个画呀，就是在地面上画出米171直升机的轮廓，画出 F4桂冠式战斗机的轮廓，画出 F14熊猫战斗机的轮廓。正常而言，它都不是一个3维的构型，只是地面上平面的一幅画。那么，如果是在空中，而且用肉眼对它进行识别，可以说是一眼假。但是呢，美国和以色列，它在空袭的过程当中，一直在针对地面上的这样的一些勾勒出战斗机和直升机轮廓的这样的一些画，去进行精准的火力打击，浪费了很多的制导弹药。客观来讲，如果是在情报体系的这样的一个引导下，像 F15啊、F16啊，包括 F18。
饺子加盐，破皮，煮米饭加点猪根卵，鸡蛋加白醋卤一锅。怎么看一个人是人是鬼？就记住这么一句话。
喂，餐馆来了，我的做好没有？
今天欢迎大家您好，中央广播电视央视节目。2025年对于中国特色。
上海海关。这么好的方法，你再说一遍。以前叫拍马屁。
1个鸡腿，2个鸡腿，3个鸡腿，蒸16分钟，算木。
住建部已经正式回应旧法。
经常出国，真的全打不玩，这样第一就是根据出发城市选择目的地，比盲目跟踪出国旅游要划算很多。那你真的不愿意有钱不喷？如果你在江浙沪地区随便去接个火，200飞包，300飞德国，400就能飞加多多，便宜的机票随意订。如果你在云贵川地区，请不要想着去基鲁老大。当然，也有稍微推荐领先的国家选择马来西亚和泰国，300-400机票钱，
多吃这5道菜，孩子长高更轻松。想让孩子猛长个儿，多吃这5道菜。8到15岁是孩子身高的猛长期。如果你也想家里的女孩长到1.7米，男孩长到1.8米，这5道菜千万不要错过。第一，胡萝卜炖肉。2，鲫鱼豆腐汤。3，玉米排骨汤。4，番茄炖排骨。5，虾仁炖豆腐。多吃这5道菜，孩子长高个子矮。
还有很多网友吐槽说，这欧洲就是美食荒漠，我这个法国老婆就是不承认，你说怎么办呢？
其实你们阳光普通话的，你们可以学法国人。法国人说话，可以吃不了这个然后如果说你实在是吃不下去了哈，你们可以点点外卖啊，我们还有法国人啊，法国人在这儿不一样的。还有啥？水果呀。
Hence, as we think about the development in the future, as we think about our role in the development, increasingly there's an important combination of allowing customers and our users to bring that knowledge in easier. And that's the integrations with your systems, where you're figuring out how you can deploy the voice agent and WhatsApp and different devices that customers or people will interact with. But ultimately, how do you bring all the knowledge ahead? How do you have the memory of things that happened in the past? CRM data and putting that into very nice technical. So that's the front end, which we kind of started the conversation on the front factor. But everything is all set into the now we have all the companies for voice agent to be there and understand you. How do you deploy? My take is, it's like, frequently the conversation is it glasses, is it phone, headphones, and it's probably the recent testing one, but I think there will be a combination of two factors. Some people will definitely prefer glasses, some people will prefer the headphones. In the future, maybe Neuralinks version of that where you can start. I'm excited for the headphones, but not the headphones that are in ears, and especially the ones that behind the ear. They still get the same voice experience. Another set of innovations to try to effectively detect without you actually saying a spoken word, detecting your mouth movements. So you can perfectly speaking with the voice agent without vocalizing it out loud and having that support. So if I were a users of the perspective, I would be most likely to adopt the headphones in the future. And then if you can most likely be the most natural of vocalizers or when you want to devices.
我先说一个结论，这是东京最不像北京的一条街。看看这房子有多宽，你以为它只是小街，但你如果认真走一遍，你会发现这里是全球住房。上里泽一番街很有意思，左边是老800楼，右边突然来一家咖啡馆，在不几乎世界就开个店，这是第10咖喱。
Or something about how you capture a different perspective, and I think that's where that will be valuable.
Can you venture a guess on what Johnny Ive and Sam are building in terms of device?
I heard few guesses. I'd love to ask you the same question. What's your guess?
I asked Sam actually.
What did he say?
He didn't say.
Okay. Yeah, my guess would be. If you were maybe if you were guessing, I want to know what's your guess?
On Sam and Johnny Ive? I feel like for revenue and to really scale, because human behavior is so accustomed to using a device in your hands, I think that's where scale lies initially. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a phone-looking device with a UI which is not natively Android or anything that already exists, but something which is a lot more different, like a platform with a button device, which is like a pendant or something. Because they don't have a hardware boot. I feel like for AI, at some point it's realizing that hardware comes pre-installed with the software which is AI first. Thinking hardware for all of these AI companies will become increasingly relevant. Hence, actually, the nothing that I always thought the AI company will come in and
可浴霸给它装到那个洗手间里，这样子的话洗澡就不会那么冷了。安装了几个？5个，在房间里嘛，我就能通过监控看一看它。
I do think voice will be a big part for that strategy as well. From what I see and hear, they will be ramping out the voice. It will be good competition for us to see whether our quality keeps ahead of us today. So that will be good test.
It must worry you. Like, I always wonder about OpenAI. All these people use the backbone of OpenAI to build something. And then, given enough time, OpenAI sees it, and then they want to build the same thing themselves. They seem to have done that in a couple of cases. When I talk to friends of mine, the agency player of AI, I think about great applications on top of a model. They also be scared of what happens to these large language models when they come out to the end product. Are you worried about that?
In the 90s, we are of course continuously looking at OpenAI, Google, and probably think about the space there. The biggest potentials of especially competing with startups. I think as a company, we started it, the approach was doing all the research and so doing the foundational model work for audio and then building product around it. And I think both are important. In defining a company where we today of course, don't depend on OpenAI for voice, and we can stay ahead and build models that are both great in English, great internationally, great across India languages, great European languages. and that's both for generating speech to text to speech, understanding speech to speech to text, and that's what I think like over the next 2-3 years, there's still so much you can do in voice, and like we spoke about how you make it more fluid and interactive. I think that's still something that's so. Of course, there's us, whether we continue to have we have my co-founder of one of the smartest people, who's going to assemble an incredible research team, and maybe crush it. So I think we will continue to do that. But then 100%, you know, we cannot just rely on research. We need to have more, both the first ones, but also how we deliver to the customers. So it's kind of independent of the research work. And here, from my perspective, there's two main things. One is the data platform offering, and then the agent platform offering. Data platform is offering generation or server centralization.
北京中医药大学教授马舒然表示，这可能是该学部所导致的。一个茶饮方。
Media entertainment companies like Star, and then on agents, we help automate voice agents and customer experience, training, education. So Anisha would be a great example.
Can you please describe to us what 11 Labs does overall? That in a simplified manner that in
we built foundational automated models to make speech more credible and speech more understood. And then we built products on top of the research that help you use voice agents that can elevate your customer experience, that can elevate and train people to turn your experiment. And then we have on the creative side with customers and how they can communicate with consumers.
日本拥有领销内有一个盒子，简简单单做，软糯香甜，非常好吃的黑芝麻米糕。
Let's take this podcast as an example. After we analyze our conversation, something might have not been recorded, we want to add a line. We can make sure that we effectively recreate my voice within that line. That's the first simple plan. Then let's take a second step. We want to take this podcast and we want to localize it outside of English, we want to go to Spanish or French or Hindi. And here, we go to our interface, and you can automatically download the podcast and then make any corrections that you need. So when we did a podcast between Lex Friedman and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that was effectively going through that workflow. Did you do that? Yeah. And that was like going through the document on the book, making sure the questions are there, and that was like a very long conversation where we tested the software, but then you can enjoy that in a number of languages.
How much does it cost? Say for example, how much did Lex and our Prime Minister, how much did it cost you?
我在想，这道家常菜食谱是不是每个回去人都吃过啊？他就是猪肉罐头米粉，他怎么那么会搭配衣服呀？你们有没有刷到一个博主叫古丽丽，把基础款的衣服搭配出了高级感？就看到他的视频，我才知道我们不是衣服少，也不是身材不好，也不是长相普通，而是不会搭。就普普通通的衣服，经过他搭配出来的，真的是老洋气了。对于我一个不会搭配衣服的人来说哈，他搭的每一套都是真心劝你们不会搭的姐妹哈，咱别着急买一堆衣服，还浪费钱不说，你可以先去看看他的视频，有几件基础款的就够了。他怎么那么会搭配衣服呀？你们有没有说到
I'm playing that game for a bit. I think I've played it for the past hour.
Emotion behind what is being said is always lost, and everything sounds a bit lost. What do you think? I'm not ready on that.
I think that's we now bring into the equation of this also. How do you preserve the voice, preserve intonation, preserve emotion? And then we do it today. We of course detect the speakers, we translate it, but then the moment we generate a speech, it actually captures the contextual information from the previous response. And
It's time from work, okay.
And then you target language. Like effectively our model, the way we created that for the localization is this. We've been trying to match pairs of languages that we have and how you deliver that in a professional setting and how you can apply that in the command. So it really works really well. The hard things is like, of course, when you have like amplitude of emotion, after screen, and the shift the audio and the sound, that was kind of hard.
Say for example, as you explain while you're saying a certain thing, language the right way? When you say a certain thing in English, isn't it hard to put that emotion into Hindi, for example?
It's not easy, 100%. And then there's like proof that the present and the future in the current way. You would still translate it. You would of course dub it. I think you can preserve the emotion, but of course my movement of my lips, my smile will. Depending on the language structure, it might be in a different part of the sentence. So maybe an easy example is German. From English to German, German usually will have noun at the end. So like that will exactly how you like smile at the part in the conversation. You can do some tricks.
What are you eating? I'm playing that Pokemon Unite.
So that's a present can still work. In the future, and there are some limitations of the current delivery software. We will likely do a lip animation tool or lip animation to move the lips tiny bit to apply to where you would smile in that part of the sentence. So I think that will happen 100%. I hope this happens this year.
Is that something you would do?
We would want to do it. I think like as we think about anything that can amplify the audio experience, we want to bring that into our flow. From a creative side, and then if we were to localize, hopefully in the next few months, we'll be able to
真正有钱的人名下都是空的。你
这个15平米的大鸡档口，一晚上能卖500多份多张纸，我能花1600多红。这个这上面做餐饮的都在吃，但是我们是不会有行为的，直接模式老板呢，这次是上海地区找不到一块钱2个的一个包子。真正的呢是点的特色，就像我们也是烧家里一样的，外头不是。
And that's from we spoke about the creative side. If you think about the agent side, I think there are some use cases here for both the lip animation, even for you. I have an idea for you. So spoke about the creative side. On the agent side, effectively what we do is allow you to create a web experience, bring any knowledge that you want inside of that experience, and then deploy that in different settings. Monitoring, evaluating how it performs. I don't hear from you Masterclass. So Masterclass works with us where they will recreate and lots of people like Gordon Ramsay, because AI Gordon Ramsay can teach you how to code while you code. Top API negotiate with Chris Voss. On the ecosystem you can negotiate, and you're negotiating by negotiating Chris Voss. So you could do your Masterclass based on a lot of your existing content and your existing work that you already did and starting out later. And actually create a here that you can speak with and learn about how structuring a $3 billion company and how to achieve that kind of competitive scale and
If I got agents fit, how would somebody find it?
导购黄金发游戏，预料去年全年纯利近乎48亿至49亿人民币，按年增长2.2倍至2.3倍，预计经调整净利润50亿至50亿人民币，同样增长约2倍。集团指，主要由于品牌影响力持续扩大，形成市场优势，加上产品的持续优化，令线上线下店铺整体收入大幅增长。截至去年底，集团新增门店10家。优化及扩入门店9家。老布黄金发游戏，预料去年全年纯利近乎48亿至49亿人民币，按年增长2.2倍至2.3倍，预计经调整净利润50亿至50亿人民币，同样增长约2倍。集团指，主要由于品牌影响力持续扩大，形成市场优势，加上产品的持续优化，令线上线下店铺整体收入大幅增长。截至去年底，集团新增门店10家，优化及扩入门店9家。老布黄金发游戏，预料去年全年纯利近乎48亿至49亿人民币，按年增长2.2倍至2.3倍，预计经调整净利润50亿至50亿人民币，同样增长约2倍。集团指，主要由于品牌影响力持续扩大，形成市场优势，加上产品的持续优化，令线上线下店铺整体收入大幅增长。截至去年底，集团新增门店10家，优化及扩入门店9家。老布黄金发游戏，预料去年全年纯利近乎48亿至49亿人民币，按年增长2.2倍至2.3倍，预计经调整净利润50亿至50亿人民币，同样增长约2倍。集团指，主要由于品牌影响力持续扩大，形成市场优势。加上产品的持续优化，并
最喜欢的炒菜，日夜忙着翻这种
很奇怪，乌吉塔巴虽然已被选为伊朗最高领袖，但始终未露面。更有意思的是，伊朗国家电视台曾表示乌吉塔巴要发表全国讲话，但之后又没了动静。在被封为以色列的盟主下，伊朗社会高度不稳。按照常规逻辑判断，乌吉塔巴公开露面发表全国讲话，有助于稳定民心；反之，乌吉塔巴迟迟不露面，将直接加剧伊朗社会的人心惶惶。那么，乌吉塔巴为何不露面？很简单，他受伤了。由于时报援引知情人士的话称，乌吉塔巴在2月28号被刚开打时已知经遭殃，但现 比他的家人目击塔巴要幸运很多，没有丧命，只是腿部受伤。英国《泰晤士报》也披露了相同的消息，在以色列空袭哈维内伊的观点是，目击塔巴可能身处其中，但他并未身亡，只是腿部受伤，这也是他迟迟不露面的关键原因。更早之前，伊朗的国家媒体也曾发布过有关目击塔巴被敌人打伤的报道。伊朗总统的儿子虽然透露目击塔巴很平安，但有一个问题很令人困惑。既然如此，那他为何不露面？从另一个角度看，目击塔巴不露面，恐怕也有安全因素的考量。美国及以色列虎视眈眈，他们都曾放话，目击塔巴有前电视希望网曾援引消息人士的话称，现在生存
What's a bao bun? Like a meat bun? 睡上去睡觉。
眼袋黑眼圈的严重细纹。
上去睡。
Where there's no way entrepreneurs building for automotive industry all these cases. But especially here, there is how strong the building is of carrying over customer experience, like what the in-car experience looks like in the future. So much opportunity to figure out how you deliver the right knowledge, the right direction, and how you deploy it.
But can I build a company just around that?
Yes. And it's like,
Let's take the example of a car company, say BMW. What do I build that they will pay me enough for that I can have a company in this?
You would start probably with something that's top of mind and something that is easy to deploy. So here, you would start with customer experience.
It's a folded bun.
So just being able to help.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
How do they get the best service? Understanding everything about BMW in this case. Understand about how the car works. You spend a lot of time on bringing that into the equation. So that's kind of the first layer. Then, in-car experience is like pretty open-ended, but how do you create an interactive radio inside of the car that people can interact with across all the time? And here too, you need to figure out what type of languages BMW might be interested in. How do you create the right voices to make sure the users in those regions are excited and happy? What type of experience will BMW actually need? So there's a lot of actually deployment work that would come in. And then as you build all those steps, you need to figure out, okay, if you are to build like a big company, not only how I build it once for BMW, but how I abstract it away to be able to replicate that into the other car companies. So you need to capture some of those knowledge elements back into other car parts. Automotive industry is a good example where I haven't seen as much yet because it's harder with some of the on-device requirements. Like some that already are getting disrupted are e-commerce, healthcare, financial services. Like healthcare is an easy example where you just need so much specific domain knowledge to be able to capture that. Both the data is very different. So capturing all the medicine names, all the flows that might need to happen for the patients that you interact with to make sure that they get the right experience. That's it's hard. And then you need to go to the hospitals, speak with the hospitals on how to deploy that, whether it's in the operating space or whether it's in the support space outside of the in-hospital operation. So that's the one that's actually already pretty heavily going across. E-commerce, I mean, recently had IPO of Misho that we work with, incredible company.
What do you do for Misho?
So we help automate the customer experience, customer support. So they have now 60,000 calls coming in to ask about the products, ask about shipping, refund, and they in English, and we create a voice agent that you can interact with. But a very cool thing with Misho is that now, so the support is there, like what's the future of e-commerce? Could you have an AI concierge the moment you go into the website that you open a website, you have a voice agent that tells you about the products available, you tell it what you're looking for, then shows you different products, you decide which ones you are interested in, and then you order that. Like, having an assistant as part of the experience would be incredible. So here too, like I think in e-commerce, going slightly deeper on like what type of e-commerce, similar. I think companies combining the domain knowledge and building quickly the voice agents will be huge.
Actually, you should help us build a agent of our own. Could be fun as a project.
Who will be the agent?
Like we feed in all the things we've said up until now and have somebody talk to people who are lonely and just see how the project goes. Just as a fun project. I speak to an AI agent all the time. I think a big use case in the world tomorrow will be to solve for loneliness. For intimacy.
I think voice agent, I agree. I think there will be a big part there. There's going to be a big balance of figuring out how it's like not, you kind of help with the virtual side, but I kind of try to bring people into the real world too, which will be an important balance. Like the most exciting one for me is education. Like how will education, like could you have a personal tutor across subjects for everyone? Like I love Richard Feynman. Could I have Richard Feynman teach me physics and like kind of both the style of delivery is so cool, like he's kind of combining the knowledge and the laughter, and then I'm learning maths and I can ask any question to Richard. That'd be amazing.
What's even more interesting is if I have a device in my ear which negates the need for me to have to regurgitate any kind of information, what happens to education? Then I don't need to learn or remember much of what traditional education needs to be.
Yeah, almost like, I don't know how you would see this, but like the way I think back at kind of my education, like I rarely use any of the formal backgrounds in mathematics. I almost never use that knowledge. But like the most valuable part was kind of learning how to learn. So I hope there's like still that component that education brings. And then of course the second part of education, it's going to be like almost the opposite of tech, which is how do you learn how to be with other people, how you like be social. So like I feel in the future of education we'll have like percentage of the time which is like fully dedicated to learning with AI and tools, and then percentage of the time there's like no tech and no technology, just like speaking with other people, being close to them, figuring out that part. The percentage of both will be interesting. Like with AI, can I now be more efficient so I just need like 20-30% of the on the former and 70% on the latter, or no? Versus like a fully augmented version for that.
As somebody not in the valley, my day job is an investor. What do you think of? You raised a lot of money yourself. I think like $300-400 million. Your company is worth a few billions today. What do you think of AI valuations in the valley today? These huge companies with a revenue number that doesn't
pick up 2 citrus berries, score
the market cap numbers that they have. Do you feel like there's a bubble brewing there?
And did you say you invest in the companies not in Silicon Valley, or you said did you invest in companies in Silicon Valley?
Some in Silicon Valley, but largely companies out of India.
That's what I thought. And first of all, I think that's great. Right? That's like similarly as we think. Like it's so cool to see more companies in India. Like we care so much about companies brewing, and I'm from Poland, in UK of course. So like as we think about our team today, most of the research engineering is from Europe, and they're like some of the most motivated, passionate people about the space. So like hopefully a lot more of that innovation comes across from Asia, from Europe, internationally for the global companies. I think the valuations in Silicon Valley, like I don't think that the bubble is brewing. I think there's like what I think is a very different part as I compare it to other cycles. I think there's a clear revenue numbers for a lot of the companies. I do, there are some pockets where I'm like a little bit skeptic of like, does it make sense? Not to just like to maybe give a concrete example is all the GPU providers that are built on top of NVIDIA that like help you get effectively inference capacity. Like,
damn it, man! They want me to verify constantly.
So I understand the bets, but they are probably higher risk than higher reward. I do think AI is in this trickier space where if you win, you can win in a significant way, in a significant, impactful way. You will work with a lot of the customers around the world if you're a good company. So I can understand why, like in the early stages of the companies get such a high valuation. I mean, I'm sure you're referring also to a lot of the research companies being formed. Here it's like almost the way I kind of see it is there's like research is still so incredibly important and will be that that multiple still makes sense. Like you those people, like if they invent one incredible thing, it's already worth it. Well, but I hope companies around the world will get the same valuations. So it's like if they build globally, they should.
The way I'm looking at it, with all the geopolitical stuff going on, if I were to wager a guess, I would think at some point in the future, we will all live in a more multipolar world where individually countries go down the path of Russia and China, where most large countries have their versions, their own little version of these products which have global reach today. So different countries will have their own social media, they'll have their own voice companies, they'll have their own most interactions with technology, even their own data centers. A country's data, I think, will sit in that country. So I feel like when that happens in the world, these companies which have large scale today, like take a WhatsApp, which is a chatting service, I don't think it is a unique enough of a product that can't be disrupted, or I will make the switch from a WhatsApp to another chatting service given a very small incentive. I think the reasons for Indians to use WhatsApp might go away when the world becomes more geopolitically confused, and I feel like it's going in that direction.
Don't you think that, let's say WhatsApp, there's like a network effect of just so many users already using WhatsApp, where it's just convenience of being on the same platform?
I would have thought that, but when I look at what's happening in China and Russia, and they have their own versions, it seems to be just fine. And also in a way, when there is evidence of these global tools being weaponized by governments in one way or another, I think the world will be a lot more skeptical in using a product just for the network benefit. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, although I do disagree. I think it's partly disagree. I agree. Data residency, yes, 100% should be in a specific countries. Also agree that like the product shape will like evolve. So like every country will use their own proprietary data to create their variations of the product. But my like I don't know if that's optimist or like the kind of value part, but I do think there's like a global component of a lot of infrastructure or software still being international. Like let's take building foundational AI models. I think the kind of the base will be pre-trained by few companies in the world, just given the resources required. There'll be open source, of course, offerings in that bucket. But then probably something like government space or companies in other sectors, they will use those to fine-tune it based on their data. And it's still huge advantages, but just not like entirely built independently. On the product, it's a very interesting that you think. I can see like how creating software is becoming so easy that you could like imagine creating that on the fly everywhere. I just feel the network effect of having people in the same place is compounding in many ways. Like almost like as you know, like as I think about. It's not the same, but in our case, we have a voice marketplace in 11 Labs where people create a voice, we authenticate it, then we can share it, and then the moment the AI voice is used, you earn money. Now we have 10,000 voices created this way, and we pay back over $11 million, coincidentally, back to the community. And it definitely helps. We have like so much styles, accents, and of course, you could replicate at scale, but you want to have the same community mechanism of paying back and making sure people can trust that software. So I do think there's some amount of trust. That is embedded. So maybe network and trust. But I guess what you were saying partly is with what happens with the geopolitics side is like the trust element may be broken and you kind of need the alternative for.
It seems to be breaking, right?
I hope it's it's a temporary glitch, but it's like more like it's not getting down. It's more like sine x times x curve when it's continue going up and it's just like a little bit of correction.
I mean, I watched a bunch of these people speak over the last week, and even when they walk out of the room, it could be the European leadership or the American leadership, people don't look happy. People look like they're angrier than they were last year, for example, or the year before. Every year people are progressively angrier, and it seems like they're voicing it for the first time. People walk out and speak in their own languages. Most of it you can't understand, but you can see the expression on their face in a way, I think.
I do think people became more authentic in like last year too. Maybe it's like a version of like there's just so much AI content and things that like you need to be authentic to like break through that noise of AI. But I feel in less on the politics side or geopolitics side, because I agree that has definitely influenced the emotions. And I'm probably a little bit too much in that bubble of AI and tech, but huge positivity compared to last year or two of like shift from how much of the risk is possible, like how much of the risk AI can mean, but increasingly into also how much opportunity AI can give. But of course, it's such a tricky week with geopolitics this week. So
I think no one's contesting that productivity will go up in societies. I think everybody's aligned to that. The only question is, should you be people with most risk capital will have the best models by virtue of how much money they pump into those models. But if these large model companies are going to cannibalize the end product if you build on top of them, I think for a young entrepreneur, it's important not to be short-sighted and kind of like diversify and hedge what they build on top of. It's not the right analogy, but not end up in a world where an Android or an Apple can charge you 20% fee to live on that platform, but use more open-sourced versions and diversify that risk. I think is important today.
I agree that you need to take a longer-term view, and it's like the starting point can prevent you from being in that long term. So if you can accelerate your value delivery by building on any of the platforms, it's fine. But if you think as an entrepreneur, if you think that any of those platforms might take over your space in the next few years, then you need to be.
Because these platforms have to make money somewhere tomorrow. I saw OpenAI is experimenting with ads for the first time, but to justify those valuations and to stop burning money, they have to make money.
You know, it's like almost like Google will have so much advantage by potentially running longer with all the infrastructure and not doing ads in the same way. So it'll be an interesting one. But I like the companies built on top of LLMs, voice, visual. I think that the main combination, like if you know domain extremely well, then the AI models is usually a good starting point, but then integrations with the system, the legacy systems that are delivered out, telephony, how you bring them up, that will take so much time. Then like building the trust with evaluations, monitoring, that will take a lot of time. So I think there's like so much opportunity for entrepreneurs to just take any of those models, go deeply into the domain and combine both best of both.
We've been flirting with the idea of building a social media platform in India. How do you think...
Zerodha or separately?
Separately. Zerodha is more like fintech, asset management, broking.
But you could do like a super app effectively, as you know.
Super apps have never worked in India. A lot of people have tried it. Actually, outside of China, they've not worked anywhere, right? Really?
Yeah. I'm wondering whether in...
do you think that has something to do with...
You know, I have an example where it did work, which is like an interesting one. But in Ukraine, they have a super app, which I think is brilliant. Also, we have a pleasure of working with their government, where they are trying to create the first agentic government. But they have a DIA app. It's effectively a citizen support app where you can ask about the benefits programs, employment programs, the different things that are happening in India. And that's how it started. So like effectively an app that every citizen can have. Of course, the passport information, visa information, etc., that you can travel and ID yourself with. But then they have multiple ministries and the way they operate. So they have multiple ministries where you have tech resources embedded in those ministries. So Foreign Affairs will have a few engineers working there. Internal Affairs will have that. Education Ministry will have that. And now those people try to figure out how to automate part of the government work and then bring it back to the Digital Transformation Ministry, which is responsible for the citizens. And now what started happening is that it started effectively adding modules across the entire government, so now you can have healthcare information. Now you can have education, where you have personalized content for you based on things that you know. And I thought it was brilliant. And what we do with them is now help bring the voice into the equation, so you can communicate and call a lot of that, or you can learn by speaking. But you literally have all the modules deployed across the government services. And I thought it was brilliant for two reasons. One is like that you embed those resources. Like in an AI world, it feels so right. That's like as I think about young entrepreneurs building the companies. Like you want, of course, engineering talent, but you want the engineering talent in sales and go-to-market and in finance and in like all the divisions, because you can help get smarter. So I liked it for that. And two, despite everything that's happening there, they are actually truly, from everybody worked with, leading the way with like one of the best apps that I've seen.
In places like India, there's the David and Goliath problem. When you're David, everybody loves you. When you're starting something, when you become a Goliath of a company, inherently people dislike large corporations in a strange way.
It's not everywhere.
Yeah, even in America, there's a little bit of anti-incumbency rebel inside everyone, and hence I don't think a super app works in places like that.
Why did you want to start social media?
I believe social media is broken today. We were looking at data from a bunch of people that the really young people, 16 to 20, take Snapchat for example. They might be logging into Snapchat the same number of times, but the amount of time they're spending on it is significantly lower. If you take Instagram, it's become almost no organic content. Like Matty will not post a picture of his, I don't know, you having a drink on a weekend, nor will I, or nor will anybody, none of my friends. It seems to be a place where brands are showcasing different things and influencers are trying to sell one thing or the other, either consciously or subconsciously. To have an app which is not governed by an algorithm which kind of insinuates and incentivizes a reaction in you by triggering hate or emotion that I don't think is conducive in the long term, I think is useful. Also, I don't like the fact that a foreign nation controls the algorithm that defines the mood, nature and evolution of the youth of my country.
Gotta catch them. And in the incentive side, do you have a take of how you change?
Gotta catch them all.
The organic side?
I think we're thinking of a very
gotta catch them all.
The penalty for being average has never been so severe, but the payoff for being great has never been so high. will find a way.
My controller.
When I first arrived in London, I don't know anyone. I've never been above the equator in my life, and I thought, okay, I want to accelerate the time that it takes to be successful in this city. I did £4 million worth of sales in our first 6 months. Spend time developing your own strategy, because in any economy there are successful businesses and unsuccessful businesses.
What would you say right now are the main opportunities available?
Technology is the advantage. If you're using AI to create stuff, now you can do superhuman work. I believe entrepreneurship is the journey of 1,000 pitches. 1,000 average pitches gets you nothing, and 1,000 great pitches gets you $10 to $100 million.
If you were starting over today and you want to make $1 million, how would you do it?
The two things that I would do.
Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the Iced Coffee Hour.
It's a pleasure. It's really good.
Would you say making money is easier today than it's ever been before?
Depends how you're making money, but certainly if you are an entrepreneur or you're entrepreneurial, it's never been a better time. It's the most incredible moment in history. Because
this fucking controller buzzes.
You can start a business cheaper and easier than ever before. You've got access to all this incredible free technology to spread a message. You can find a team who might be working anywhere in the world. You can find customers who might be anywhere in the world with a problem that they want to solve. You know, it used to be that if you wanted to start a small business not that long ago, you needed a huge amount of startup capital. Especially if you wanted to be a global business or you wanted to have customers across America or around the world. That was a serious investment. And now, lots of people who've got a TikTok account and a little shop, they've got customers in 12 countries and, you know, they're away. So it is a pretty magical time. The reason I don't give you a clear answer on that is because we've got two systems at the moment. We've got something that is the dying industrial age system, which is the system that kind of went from the early 1800s to the 2000s. And that was like the system we all kind of grew up in and all of our institutions are based upon. And that system's in decline. And then we've got the rising digital age. And that digital age is a new system where you can live and work from anywhere, you can do business anywhere. So it has a new set of rules. So the reason I'm not giving you a clear answer is because it depends if you're playing by the old set of rules or the new set of rules.
Well, it seems like a lot of people say that they're worse off than their parents are. Is that actually the case, or are people just becoming a lot whinier?
Well, you are definitely worse off than your parents are if you're in that industrial age system. So, like, the peak of that industrial age system was the late 1900s. You know, so that was the best time ever to have a normal job. You know, everything just kind of worked. It was the late stage industrial age. Everything was set up, everything was working, and nothing had really been disrupted by digital at that point. And now that we're 5 years past COVID, COVID was the thing that accelerated the digital transformation. It meant that everyone suddenly had to work from home and everyone had to figure out technology. You know, businesses had to take their business online. So it does come down to, if you are someone who has a very similar job to your parents, you're probably worse off than your parents. However, if your parents scratch their head and go, what the heck is this podcasting thing? And what do you mean that you have an Instagram account and you send people to a Shopify account? Right? Then you're probably better off than your parents. So, like, most of my friends who work in the entrepreneurial space and have their own businesses, they earn more in a year than their parents might have earned in their entire career. And, you know, they're sitting there saying, well, actually, the startup costs were lower than ever. I didn't have to take on VC capital. I can totally live on my own terms and by my own rules. So it really is this big distinction between industrial age or digital age. Which set of rules are you playing by? Old rules or new rules?
I love your story. I love your debates, all the content you put on YouTube. I think it's incredibly informative, and you do such a good job at relaying your message. For those that are unfamiliar with you, who are you? Explain yourself in like a minute, and what gives you credibility to talk on this?
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 21 years old, and it grew to be a business that was doing 10.7 million in the first 3 years. Since then, I think I've done 7 startups that went 0 to $1 million in their first 12 months. I've had 3 businesses go north of 10 million. So I'm very much a startup founder. I get involved in starting things. My passion is starting things from scratch. Today I run a group of 7 companies, which are a combination of businesses that I've started or bought. And I run an entrepreneur accelerator that's worked with 5,500 companies globally that helps them to stand out, scale up, and make a positive impact in the world. and I've written 5 best-selling books on entrepreneurship and startup culture.
So being someone that's built up so many different multi-million-dollar businesses, what opportunities at this exact moment would you say are the hottest? Because I feel like back in the day it was Shopify dropshipping. I feel like for a moment in time people wanted to be like day traders, and that hype has kind of died down.
Yeah, good.
What, like even Amazon FBA, that was a big one. What would you say right now are the main opportunities available?
So I want to answer this in 3 parts. Opportunity 1, opportunity 2, and then how to think about that question. So opportunity 1 is a personal brand linked to an elegant, scalable business model. So if you can build a personal brand, if you can find someone who has a personal brand, and let's call it, that they have 100,000 plus followers and they've got a good relationship with those followers, and then you can link that personal brand to an elegant, scalable business model, that is probably the number 1 opportunity in the world. And when you see this, you'll see it everywhere. So like, for example, this drink is Chris Williamson and his business partner, who are both influencers. They've both got big personal brands, and they figured out we can put a scalable business model on the back of that. You see this with Jay Shetty. You see this with Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett. So you're going to start seeing everywhere that the influencers are not taking sponsorships anymore. They're just going to bolt businesses onto their own. They're going to do influence for equity. They're going to basically use their influence to generate enough cash flow to live on, and then the additional influence goes into building equity value of a business that's scalable. And this is going to be a really sensible, investable, scalable business opportunity for a long time. Now, if you don't have a huge brand, you can be the one who finds a good business and links it to a personal brand. You can be a partner to someone who has a personal brand. So that's opportunity number 1. That's probably one of the biggest opportunities in the world. Second biggest opportunity is the one Cody Sanders talks a lot about.
You can just become Magic Gigas
in this. Baby boomer business. Baby boomers are aged 61 to 79. They have
That's
more
so cool,
than half
man.
the economy in their hands. So 52% of all value is in the hands of a small group of people who are 61 to 79. They have something like 70% of all business equity. So businesses by valuation mostly are owned by baby boomers. But they're at that stage of life where they don't want to be running those businesses anymore. They want to pass them down. And there is a demand and supply imbalance of the number of people who want to pass over a business versus who they can pass that business to. And that represents a huge opportunity for younger people. Like one of the coolest things you could do, I was talking to some young guys the other day. They're going to be buying a landscape gardening business, and the business is in decline and has been in decline for about 4 or 5 years, and it still does more than 7 figures of revenue, but it's in decline. And as soon as they just went and did some testing where they knocked on a few doors, what we did is got them to take an iPad. You go take a photo of the front of the house. You ask ChatGPT to show what this house would look like fully landscaped. Go up to the front door and say, hey, we've done a rendering of your house, what it would look like fully landscaped. And people go, wow, that's incredible.
ChatGPT's renderings, especially for like interior design,
I heard they're incredible.
Wow,
yeah. Their ability, if you just say, hey, make it like this style, you don't even know what the proper nomenclature is, like words for a certain style. You just tell, oh, I want it a little bit more elegant, a little bit more hard angles and stuff like that, and it makes crazy renderings.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's free. Like, these are the types of things that used to cost maybe a few $100s and take a few weeks. So there was no way you could possibly go door to door showing people what the house would look like. Anyway, that's an example where the baby boomers not going to do that. They don't have the energy for it. They're not in that phase of life. But a younger person who takes over that business, vendor financed, they buy the business with the previous owner financing them into the deal. Then they apply some technology, they apply some energy, and away they go. They've got that.
Do you think this is something the average person can do though? Like, with now that we can access cheaper labor in all these different countries, and we have a global network, and you have access to things like ChatGPT, that it's then decreased the bar in terms of like skill necessary for being a successful entrepreneur? Because the common argument against this is that not everyone can be an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
there's certain skills and maybe personality traits and character traits that are necessary in order to be an effective.
I agree with that. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everyone should be an entrepreneur. With that said, everyone can be part of an entrepreneurial team, and you're going to have a lot more fun being part of an entrepreneurial team than being part of a big corporate. So if you have an experience, I think you had an experience of going into an investment bank when you were young, and they just shoved you in a corner.
Oh, data entry.
Yeah, and got you doing that, and you like just tried to say hello to the boss, and he's like, "You're not allowed to say hello to me directly."
Yeah,
the manager.
Chain of command.
Yeah, the shame of command.
Yeah,
right? You know,
really.
you
awful.
You are not allowed to talk to the boss, right, directly. Like that's the kind of nonsense that people put up with in corporate jobs. So, you know, if you had
kind of
worked
nonsense
for an amazing founder with less than 10, 12 other people on the team, so like not everyone can or should be an entrepreneur, but there are you can be part of entrepreneurial teams. You know, entrepreneurship is a team sport. One role on the team is captain of the team, founder, you know, that sort of thing. But there are plenty of other roles. Like in my entrepreneurial team, you know, I've got a CFO and a COO and a Chief Revenue Officer. I've got like people on my team who are earning a lot of money. They've got equity ownership in the businesses. I might have started those businesses, but they are part owners in those businesses, and they're earning a lot of money and getting a lot of value from it. So you don't have to, like, if you think being an entrepreneur means that you are a founder, that you're starting from scratch, not everyone can or should do that.
Who should not be an entrepreneur?
Well, you said the word average. You know, if you've got enough self-awareness to say I'm average at the moment, I'm just an average person, go join a team with someone who's above average. You know, that's totally normal. It's normal to be average. Average is normal, right? So, like, we all think that we should be in the top 1%. 99% of people can't be in the top 1%, but we can get around those people. You know, you did pretty well if you're on the same team as Michael Jordan back in the day. So I'm a really big believer that you do an entrepreneur apprenticeship, you do at least 2 years working around someone. I think you guys met through, like, almost you were...
Yeah, it was, I mean, we all kind of had the same story of, like, you know, reaching out to someone who was successful in a space we were interested in, provided them with free work, which a lot of people don't like. Say, oh gosh,
people get so triggered when I say go and work for free. Go and work for free.
Yeah. There you go. You're gonna get some hate comments.
But the counter argument to that is, what if I'm supporting a family? I got 3 kids at home. I'm barely making ends meet. I come home at 8 p.m. Like, I can't afford to work for free. The people who can work for free have all of these things working in their favor.
Well, for starters, life's not fair. Like, at no point in human history has it been fair. Just get over that idea that it should be fair, and that, like, here's the thing: you've got 3 kids. That's not fair. That's amazing. That's an incredible blessing that your family's got that some other people don't have. Right? So count your blessings for what you've got. But I'm a father of 3 kids. There are certain things you just can't do. There are young entrepreneurs who can outperform me because I also have a commitment to drop my kids at school every morning, and they're working when I'm dropping the kids at school. That's it. That's fine, right? We all have. There's no fairness. There's just trade-offs. Now, what you need to do is find a way. So finding a way might be that 80% of your time you do the stuff that pays the bills, and you take on a little bit of additional work in order to get your foot in the door. All we're talking about with work for free is normally that advice is pitched at young people who don't have much experience to leverage, and it's like, just get your foot in the door. You're not actually working for free. What you're doing is you're providing your labor in exchange for higher level experience than you could normally get your hands on. So there's an exchange going on. It may not be a direct cash exchange, but the exchange is, hey, I'm going to invite you in above your pay grade, right? And you're going to be in an environment where you get to jump up. I have got 12 ex-employees who are now millionaires because they came and worked for me and around me, and they did 2 to 3 or 4 years working for me, and then they went off and did their own business, or they took over their family business, and now they're multimillionaires. My ex-assistant took over his father's business that was $500,000 a year, and it's now $5 million a year. 2 young guys who were on my sales team, they met on the sales team, they came up with their idea on the sales team, they left, they started a business, and they sold it for $7 million. So, and these guys are early 20s. So, realistically, if you want to work in close proximity with me, like, a lot of people would pay a lot of money to do that. So
it's like paying for college.
Yeah, exactly. So people go, oh, you can't work for free, but you can go to college and get into debt, right?
See, it's so funny. I said the same thing with Caleb Hammer, and he had one of his employees with him, and his employee was talking about how much he was making, and I said, I thought that was great that he's getting paid for this because people would pay Caleb for that same job, and people got so upset that here I am advocating for free labor. But at the same time, I'm thinking, like, when you look objectively at the opportunity that what Caleb is doing and how much that's valuable to somebody else who wants to do that, I mean, like, people should, like, his value, I think, is worth, like, 80 grand just to pay Caleb, just to see how his team works.
But just look at anyone who's a high performer. They ate glass for several years in one form or another. Ed Sheeran busking on the streets day after day after day while writing his songs, getting his performance skills. You get the comedians who do like years of like little tiny clubs and then they get their breakthrough. So it's just a way to accelerate. And by the way, you don't have to do that. It just takes longer. Like working for free is just an accelerant. So all we're talking about is, do you want to accelerate the time that it takes? It's no different to this. When I first arrived in London, 2006, I arrived with a suitcase and a credit card. And I don't know anyone, I've never been above the equator in my life. Born in Australia, moving to London for the first time. And I thought, okay, I want to accelerate the time that it takes to be successful in this city. So I rented a private dining room at a nice restaurant for 30 people. I reached out and found the who's who in the business scene that I was entering, and I invited them to a private dinner. And there was 28 people who came along. They mostly came to see each other. So I kind of reached out and said, hey, look, I'm coordinating. This is the guest list. These are the people who I'm inviting. And they were, oh, okay, I'll go because so-and-so's there. So I brought together this group of 28 people. I pay for dinner. I put the whole thing on. During the dinner, I stand up and I say, hey, look, I'm Daniel. I've just arrived. I'm young. I'm 25. I've just arrived from Australia. It's my first time in London. I'm looking to start a business. Ideally, I'd love to have a one-to-one meeting with you. I've just joined a great little members club for business. If you're happy to have a meeting with me, I'm going to head round and make a time. So I go around and I book 24 one-to-ones. I then do, in the following 2 weeks, I do 24 one-to-ones, and out of all of it, I think I agreed 20 joint venture affiliate partnerships where they were going to email their email list and help promote my launch event. Day of launch event, 800 bookings come in for our first launch event. I think the total was about 3,000 or 4,000 across the rest of the week. In our first 6 months, we did £4 million worth of sales. Now, 5% of businesses in the UK get to $1 million or more, ever. I did £4 million worth of sales in our first 6 months. Now, why did we do that? Because I accelerated it. I said, for the cost of putting on a dinner party and buying 30 people dinner, for the cost of buying cups of coffee and creating a deal. Oh, by the way, the deal for them to get involved with my launch was also, I'm going to run a launch event. The launch event is going to have a ticket price, and 200% of the ticket price goes to you as an affiliate commission. So the ticket price was like 30, and I said, we pay 60. So for every person who pays 30, we'll pay you 60.
How'd you afford to do that? Was there upsells at the event?
Well, we just knew that we were gonna sign up clients. So I set it up from the beginning that when we've signed up all those clients, we'll owe you the commissions, but we will owe you that amount of money. I just built a little system and executed.
But what do you think you had at in your early 20s that the average person now in their early 20s doesn't have? Because most people probably look at themselves like, I'm either broke or I'm in college debt and I'm struggling to get by. You probably were somewhat in the same circumstance, but you still had the ability to make something. What differentiated you from the?
What differentiated me is 2 years working for a mentor. So I worked for this guy called John from 19 to 21, and here's the super lucky thing.
Of course, with everything going on with the economy these days, you have to ask yourself, what does the future hold for business? Because if you ask 9 different experts, you're going to get 10 different answers. From a bull market to bear market, things are going up, interest rates are going down. It'd be very helpful to have a crystal ball at this point.
But until that happens, over 41,000 businesses have already future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid platform. You see, with just one unified business management suite, you have just one source of truth, giving you all of the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. Plus, with real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. When you're closing your books in days, not weeks, you're spending way less time looking backwards and way more time on what's next.
So whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Oh, and speaking of opportunity, right now you can download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning everything when you go to netsuite.com/iced. Again, the guide is free for you at netsuite.com/iced. netsuite.com/iced with the link down below in the description. Thank you so much, NetSuite, for sponsoring this podcast. And now, let's get back to the episode.
So I worked for this guy called John from 19 to 21. Here's the super lucky thing. I dropped out of university. At university, I was running nightclub parties, and I was the cool entrepreneur who was running the nightclub parties. And I was really frustrated that university was not teaching me anything about actual business, and none of the lecturers had done any business themselves. They were all academics. So I decided on a whim that I'm not going back. I quit after year one. And I go to work for this guy who was doing a startup, and it was a disaster. Like, it was just a total shit show. And then I asked around my friendship group and my family group, is there anyone else who knows someone who's starting a new business? I want to be part of a startup. And my dad, through a friend, said, hey, there's this guy called John. He previously has had successful businesses, marketing agencies, and these sorts of businesses. He's doing a startup. Do you want to go and... he's willing to have a half an hour meeting with you if you want to come and join his team. So I go and knock on the door, and it's the best house I've ever been in. Like, it's the first time I'd ever set foot in a beautiful designer, like, special house with a big door and all of this sort of stuff. And I walk in and I'm like, I'm not leaving until I get a job with this guy. We ended up talking for 3 hours, and it was clear that there was really good mentor chemistry there. He was 37, I was 19, and he we just vibed, and basically he said, you can come and join my team. I'm going to give you all sorts of jobs. You're going to be my shadow. And for 2 years, I shadowed him around. I did sales, lots of sales. I did lots of marketing meetings. I did hiring and firing and all this sort of stuff. So I got 2 years working for John. We went from 0 startup to 6 million in the first year. We went from working out of his kitchen to 60 people in an office in year 2. So I got the experience of what that was like.
At what point did you start accepting salary from him?
At no point. So I was commission only. So commission only sales, because that was his condition. He basically said, you've got no skills yet. But he said, you can be a commission only salesperson. He said, but on top of commission only selling, I'm going to give you all these other jobs, because my pitch to him is, I want to be an entrepreneur like you. I want to learn from you. He's like, okay, so I'm going to teach you a lot, but you're going to do commission only selling, and then when you've got any spare time, you're going to do all this other stuff that I need you to do as well. And he was an amazing mentor, by the way.
What would you say are like the key things that you took away from him that then allowed you to go and build these several different businesses?
Lesson number 1, everything is downstream from lead generation. Lead generation is like your primary first mover. You need people's attention, you need to know who they are, you need to know that these people are interested. So any business that I start with lead generation. And that I got from John, very early days. So if I was to launch a new business, let's say I was going to launch a podcast studio, and I'm thinking I'm going to have like an actual space, a physical space, people can rent it and all that sort of stuff, right? I'm just thinking, because we're in a podcast. I'm not going to buy any equipment, I'm not going to lease a space, I'm not going to do anything that costs money. All I'm going to do is launch what's called a waiting list campaign. And that waiting list campaign is basically, we're launching a studio in Las Vegas. It's for anyone who wants to have a podcast. You want to do more than 10 episodes a year. If that's you, register for the waiting list, answer 5 questions, and then we'll get back to you when we're ready to launch. If I can get 150 people to join the waiting list, then I'm going to progress to round 2, like as in the second thing we'll do. But ultimately, I'm not going to advance that idea if I can't generate leads. So what most people do is they do it the other way around. They try and spend 100 grand setting up a podcast studio, and then see if they can get people to book in. And I'm like, no, we don't spend anything unless we know we got the bookings. So I'm looking for lead generation first. So that the first thing that John taught me is everything is downstream from lead generation. You have to be amazing at lead generation if you want to be in business.
One thing I really liked, you had a great debate with Gary's Economics, the Diary of a CEO. Got quite heated at sometimes. And what's interesting is that it seemed like on YouTube, a lot of people, or at least the top comments, agreed with Gary. But on Twitter, everyone was agreeing with you. And I saw a stark difference between where people were hanging out and congregating online in terms of like which belief they aligned with. But for those who haven't seen it, Gary argued that the system is rigged and the average young person is getting poorer, while you argued for entrepreneurship and fewer barriers. What do you think he got most wrong in his view on how to fix inequality?
I think his solution for inequality may have worked 50 years ago, maybe 60, 70 years ago, because we lived in a world back then where the wealthiest people had physical locations, they had physical businesses. If you were wealthy, 60, 70 years ago, the 1950s, you probably owned a factory or an office, you had people in that office, and there was no way you were going to run that remotely. Like, it was impossible that you could move to Dubai and have a remote, business. So you could overtax people. It was very, very difficult for people to just throw their toys out the pram and leave and be fine about it. The issue that Gary's not taking into consideration now is that the rules have fundamentally shifted. I go to a gym in London, and I asked my trainer, who owns this gym? Oh, it's an Australian guy. I'm like, oh yeah, like, is he around here? He's like, no, he lives in Australia. And it's like, well, how does he run this gym in London? Oh, he just, by Zoom, he's got a manager and he runs it remotely. So you can have almost any business that you just run remotely now, that you can be anywhere in the world. So the issue that Gary, he's not considering second and third order consequences. So you ramp up taxes on wealth and all of that. And of course, it's kind of like, imagine if I said to you, look, winning tennis is pretty easy. All you have to do is just serve the ball really hard and ace. Just ace them, and if you keep doing that, well then, you'll win all the points. So yeah, but you're up against Roger Federer. He knows how to return the serve. Like, he knows what to do next. So it's like ramp up the taxes on the rich and wealthy entrepreneurs, and they're like, oh, okay, this is no longer an attractive country. I'll just move my company somewhere that is attractive to do it. In the UK, 1% of people pay 30% of taxes, 10% of people pay 60% of the taxes, so you don't need many people to leave in order to crash the economy.
Why do you think there's so much inequality, though? Because you hear people saying the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer.
Now that is the question, and that is the question Gary should be asking. His answer for why is there inequality is because inequality creates inequality. So it's a circular reason. There's inequality because there is inequality, and the inequality gets worse because of the inequality. The reason for inequality, all inequality, is an advantage. Right? Think about it just logically. If there's inequality in a sports team, one sports team has an advantage. Right? So what is it? Maybe this team's taller. Maybe this team's been training harder. Maybe this team is a rookie team versus a professional team. Whatever it is, there's always an advantage. So the question is, what's the advantage? Like, what is the advantage right now? The biggest advantage is technology. And technology creates inequality. And a simple example would be, if we all were up against each other in a marathon race, and I've got a bicycle, and you guys are running on foot, we don't have to think too hard about who's going to win. Right? My technological advantage, if I have a piece of technology that I can leverage and you're not leveraging that same technology, if I read the rule book and it said you can either run or cycle, and you guys go, well, historically it's always been running, so I'm going to do it the traditional way of putting on my laces and running with my running shoes. I'm like, well, the rules changed. You can use a bicycle now. In fact, you can use a car. I'm going to use a car. Right? So I do my 26 miles in a car, enjoying the air conditioning and texting at the same time. You guys are running your asses off, sweating it out, and it's like, well, there's a massive inequality in our finishing times. Because I leveraged technology and you didn't leverage technology. Yeah. So technology is the advantage. The reason that society is dividing in two is because, especially AI has two superpowers. Superpower number one is the ability to get you to consume way more than you thought. You go on TikTok thinking, oh yeah, I'll just have a little look at TikTok for 10 minutes. 2 hours later, you're still scrolling. That's technology. That's an algorithm. That's AI that did that to you. It hacked your attention. When you've got a cat and there's a laser pointer, and the laser pointer looks like something to attack, and the cat goes running after it, its primitive brain can't keep up with the fact that there's this thing called a laser pointer. We are now that cat chasing dopamine through these scrolling mechanisms, and plenty of people now have 6-7 hours a day on their screen. So the AI is doing that to us. It's creating hyper consumers. So half the population, or more than half the population, is going down the hyper consumption route. And then the second piece of superpower for AI is hyper creator. So if you're using AI to create stuff, you're creating all these things with the support of AI. Now you can do superhuman work. So there are people in my circle, I bet you guys as well, where I say, oh, what are you working on at the moment? They're like, oh, I've got a book on the go, I'm organising a conference, we're doing a retreat for this, we're launching a SaaS product, I've got a team of 10 people who are working on this, and I've got some people in the Philippines who are like outsourcing to this and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, wow, how are you doing this with like just a small dynamic little team? It's like, well, we use a lot of tech, we've got an amazing tech stack. So these people are using technology to their advantage, these people are being used by technology to their disadvantage. And that is the fundamental wedge. This is the bifurcation of society, and it's going to get so much worse by 2030.
Isn't this just going to continue, like you said, just getting worse and worse and worse, making it harder for the average person to compete? Because the way I see it is that maybe 50 years ago, you had every local economy served by those few businesses, and so it was easy to kind of spread things around, or people could earn a pretty good living being in one town, serving that town. But now you're competing against Amazon and one big giant retailer who's able to undercut everything. Yeah. And then they just keep getting bigger. And it's hard, like, how do you compete against something that big? And isn't this just going to continue getting worse?
The penalty for being average has never been so severe, but the payoff for being great has never been so high. Now, are you familiar with a distribution called a bell curve? And the opposite of a bell curve is power law. So the Industrial Revolution moved everything to an even distribution on a bell curve, where essentially everyone's life fit within a nice little average bell curve distribution. most doctors aren't the same as all other doctors. Most, even around the 1950s and 1960s, blue-collar workers earned pretty much the same as white-collar workers. Like, it was a margin, might have been 10 or 20% difference, but it was mostly the same neighborhoods and the same people and all of that sort of stuff. So everything had moved towards this bell curve. Digital technology moves everything onto a power law. So in the world of dating, 1% of daters do 90% of the people who want to date them. Jack. It's Jack's fault, right? He's lying about all of his stats here. He's got his photoshopped pictures on. And so what happens with power laws is you get something like the 1% that does at least 30%, and technology moves everything from a bell curve to a power law. So it really does do this. Now, there are a new set of rules that will allow you to build your own mini power law, where you can carve out a micro niche. That you can build a brand within the micro niche, and you can actually have your own little power law where you're the king of that power law. That does exist. The biggest thing I keep coming back to in this is that there's the old set of rules and the new set of rules. The old set of rules work really well. So prior to 2000, the benefits of being average were huge, probably the best in human history. In all of human history, it was the best time to be average. Just an average person did well. If you were average, you got a house, you got a car, you got a holiday. You didn't have to take on lots of debt. You got education. You got rising wages, income security, retirement security, healthcare. Like, all of it was packaged up for the middle of the bell curve. And all they said is just play by the rules, and you'll get all of this stuff in the middle of the bell curve there. After 2000, we moved slowly and then rapidly towards this power law. People are like, hey, I'm playing by the rules. I'm a good average person, right? And it's like, yeah, the penalty for being average is now severe. You can't be average. I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying this is the
right. You're saying it's how it is.
I'm just observing what is. Like, I can only play the cards that I've been dealt. If I could wave a magic wand and go back to 1999, I'd say fantastic. Like, let's freeze in time. Let's have that economy. Let's get rid of everyone's smartphone. You can all have a Nokia 3210. And we'll take away social media or whatever. That would probably be good for most people. But I can only play the cards we're dealt.
Let's play devil's advocate for a second in that debate between you and Gary. His main points, if you were to argue how they are correct, what would you say?
Well, for starters, his identification of the problem is bang on. He's raising the alarm on the problem, and he should be raising the alarm on the problem, because most politicians still think that it's 1960 as well, right? So all the politicians are caught in the past. He's raising a red flag and saying, hey, there's a huge problem that's getting worse. However, if you look at something called the clinical method, which is how doctors and how the medical industry works, there is the problem, there is what's causing the problem, and then there's the treatment plan that's appropriate for those causes. Gary just is stuck on the problem. And the annoying thing is we all agree. Like, everyone can see the problem. That's not pointing at a fire doesn't make you a firefighter. It just says, okay, you notice that the building's on fire. That's great. You're screaming about it. Okay, good. We all understand the building is on fire. So what he does really, really well is he brings attention to the fact that there is a big problem, that a lot of people who are playing by the rules are not getting ahead. A big section of society, the rug is being pulled from under them. So that's fantastic. Where I worry is that he's jumping from being extremely good at articulating the problem to then just going, the solution is this. And what most people who are watching him are doing is they're going, because he's so good at articulating the problem, he must have a really good solution. And those things are not necessarily correlated. Sometimes people are good at understanding the problem, but they don't identify the cause or the right treatment plan. So you actually have to have all three of those things in the chain in order to fix something. You have to problem, cause, and treatment.
It seems like he's really emphasizing the victim mindset, though, and getting people hooked on this emotional feeling like, it is impossible for me, the system is rigged against me, I am the underdog, and therefore I should be outraged, and there's nothing I can do about it, but I gotta follow Gary.
Like, by the way, I get it. Like, it sucks. It really sucks. We all went to a schooling system, and the schooling system taught us how to be and how to behave, and gave us a set of rules. And now, if you play by those rules, you don't get ahead, and that really does suck. And it feels like we've now. The other interesting thing too is that when I was growing up, you had almost no visibility as to what the lives of a wealthy person looked like. Like, you knew that maybe they had a Rolls Royce, or maybe that they had a Ferrari. You kind of drove past big houses, and you might have wondered what the people who live in those houses do, right? But you didn't really have a lot of visibility into that. Today, you open your phone and it's just, this guy's got a new Lamborghini, and she's now hanging out in Thailand, having an amazing holiday, and living the dream. And you go through and you're scrolling through and you're going, gee, my life really sucks. I'm on the wrong side of this. And obviously, it's amplified by social media, this discontent. So I get the outrage, but outrage doesn't solve anything. Like, you can either wait. Here's the choices you've got. You can either wait for the entire economic system of the world to change and to go hyper-socialist, perfectly redistribute the wealth, not crash the economy like it does every single other time they implement socialism, Or you can say, hey, guess what? The rules have changed. Some people know those rules. I can learn from those people. I can play by those rules. I've got to throw away some of the stuff that I learned in the past. I've got to join an entrepreneurial team, learn from a new mentor, right? Go through a bit of a process. Like, it's not like the money has disappeared off the planet. The money's there. Like, we have money on this planet. It's just that it's not flowing down the same rivers that it used to flow down. Got to go and find the new rivers.
Now, while we're on this subject, you know we talk nonstop about managing your money smarter. Like, it's one thing to make money, but keeping it, growing it, and creating a future with it is another thing entirely.
That's why we're really excited about today's sponsor, Chime, because they're helping millions of people make real progress with their money. With Chime, there are no monthly fees, no minimum balance requirements, and no surprise overdraft fees. Plus, you can overdraft up to $200 fee-free with SpotMe. And if you set up direct deposit, you can even get your paycheck 2 days early. Need your money even sooner? Chime's MyPay lets you access up to $500 of your paycheck before payday with no mandatory fees or interest. And guys, we've all had those moments where you overdraft on accident. I mean, it is so brutal getting hit with that $30 fee. I know it's happened to me several times. With Chime, they spot you instead. In fact, they've spotted members over $30 billion so far. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. You can open up your account in just 2 minutes at chime.com/coffee. Once again, that is chime.com/coffee with a link down below in the description. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by Bancorp Bank, N.A. or Stripe Bank, N.A. members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply. Out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Chime checking account card. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. Thank you so much to Chime for sponsoring this episode, and back to the podcast. Okay, we have a little thing I want you to react to.
When people sidestep that and say, okay, I'm not going to get into university debt, I'm just going to go off and actually figure out how the world works, there's actually loads of opportunities.
Okay, so I guess we've sorted it then. All our viewers need to do is go and buy Dan's book, become an entrepreneur, become a millionaire. It's that easy. Why weren't you guys doing it to begin with? They're idiots. The viewers are idiots. They should be just being more entrepreneurial. It's as simple as that. More entrepreneurial, start a business. Listen, I come from East London, okay? My friends can't feed their kids, okay? And if it was as simple as going out and being an entrepreneur, I can bet you they would do it. I can bet you they would do it. I'm sick of multi-millionaires telling kids who can't afford to turn the heating on, you just need to be more entrepreneurial. It's sick, man. It's sick. This gives people mental illness. It gives people mental illness. Tell them the truth, okay? We, your older generation, we took the opportunities, and now it's almost impossible to get out of poverty. And don't just stand up and wave, your millions of pounds in front of them and say, if you're an entrepreneur like me, you can do it. You can have it. Because it's sick. Because they can't feed their kids down. They can't turn the heating on. Don't tell them to be more entrepreneurial. Fix the system that drives more and more and more of them into poverty every generation.
I find it very strange.
I've got a bit of trauma from being around Gary. Yeah. Gary gives me anxiety.
I can see almost a recoil.
Oh, yeah,
that gives you depression.
Yeah, that particular point. What's the question, or did you just want to trigger me?
No, I just wanted to hear, like, what would be your...
Well, I mean, he says at the end, fix the system. How? How do you want to fix the system? Because when you ask him, how do you want to fix the system, he says, subscribe to my YouTube channel and I'll tell you what to do in the future. That's what he said at the end of the debate. So he's just screaming, I'm sick of it! And everyone's like, well, yeah, I'm sick of it too. We need to fix the system. Okay, what do you want to do? So one of his main solutions is wealth taxes. So there's so many problems with wealth taxes. They've been tried 15 times across Europe. They got rolled back 11 times. And these are like socialist countries that rolled them back because they just don't work. They cause a wealth exodus. It's impossible to quantify what is wealth. Because on any given day, markets fluctuate up and down. People then take evasive action to fluctuate the value of their assets down.
Can I get credits because my portfolio always goes down?
Yeah, you could. Or no, under Gary's law, you can't.
Probably not under Gary's law.
Oh, okay.
You should be able to, but not
Gary just looks at you and says, you look too rich, we're going to take what you've got, right? He's very clear about just wanting to punish the rich for being rich. Look, every time these kind of socialist ideas, I've got lots of friends who grew up in Eastern Europe where they tried all of these redistribution methods, and they tried wealth taxes, and they tried super high taxes, and like it crashed their economy. A great example is Poland. Like Poland was one of the poorest countries under socialism in the whole of Europe, and now, after 40, 50 years of capitalism, it's one of the wealthiest countries. Like it's the fastest growing. Poland is out of all of Europe, Poland is the one country that is sticking most closely to capitalist principles, and their economy is booming. So free markets, like what sucks is that socialism sounds like a really great idea, but it delivers horrific results. Capitalism sounds like a horrific idea, and it actually delivers amazing results. So we have this issue where, Gary's like screaming, fix the system, Dan, just fix the system. Okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Because ultimately, what he's describing is, the UK government has already done high taxes, and it's been a disaster. Like, we found out this week that we've collected 15 billion less than we were expecting for the last period of, I think, 90 days. So 15 billion of taxes wiped out, because high tax rates equal lower taxes collected.
It's funny you mention that. In Los Angeles, they just enacted a measure called ULA, which is basically a mansion tax. Any property over $5 million in the city or county of Los Angeles subject to this additional tax of 5%. So if it's $4.9 million, no tax. If it's $5 million, a $1 extra, there's a 5% tax on that. They thought that it would raise all this extra revenue that they could then put towards the homeless problem in Los Angeles. After a year of going through this, they raised substantially less revenue, even though they had a higher tax on the property, simply because people said, I'm not going to sell, or I'm not going to pay it, or I'm going to structure the property differently so that it sells under the $5 million amount. And so maybe it's worth 5.2, but I'm going to sell it for 4.9 and then throw in the furniture for that extra little bit. And those are two separate transactions.
Or genuinely, the market just moves down. Like the buyers won't pay over $5 million themselves.
Yeah. So everything shifted downwards. Just 5.1 properties are worth 4.8.
And also, people have choice. So plenty. I bet. Well, I know that plenty of people have moved out of California and they've come here to Vegas.
That's what we've done.
Joe Rogan. I mean, how much did it just cost California to lose Joe Rogan? Tens of millions. Elon has moved his head office out to Texas. So, I mean, these are the high-profile examples, but there's thousands of these happening every month where smaller businesses, I mean, and also accounting firms, they go and set you up in Delaware. You might live in California, but your company is over in a different place. So, it's very easy to say, oh, it's easy to win tennis, just slam the ball as hard as you can and ace the other player. Okay, but you're up against the Roger Federers of the world. They can return the serve. They know how to, they play tennis too. So, whatever the government comes up with, remembering this, the brightest people don't work for government. The dumbest, laziest people work for government. So the smartest, hardest working people don't work for government. So the idiots come up with rules, and then the smart people go, oh, well, this is just how we get around this rule.
I liked your advice, though, in your response to Gary. And you said, if I heard your advice when I was younger, I never would have started. I would have been so discouraged by what you have to say that I wouldn't have even tried, and I wouldn't be here today. And I agree with you. When I was younger, I would look to other people. Tim Ferriss was a huge inspiration with his book, The 4-Hour Work Week.
Me too.
And his example of a guy in Malibu making $60,000 a month and being able to drive his Lamborghini down PCH. And I remember reading this at like 18, 17 years old.
It makes a big difference.
It just thinking that that's possible. Just open the opportunity that now I think, wow, if this guy could do it, I could do it too.
It's interesting. I think it was a couple of your like how I make X amount per month on YouTube videos that for me motivated me to be like, okay, well, like, if this guy can do it, I feel like I could get involved too, and I can start making money. And it's funny because now he can't make those videos because people are like, you're just bragging. You're just... The amount of comments on those videos that were positive, people were like, I couldn't believe you could make this on YouTube, and it's inspired me to start my own business, to get on YouTube, to make a brand for myself. Can't make them anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. It worked up to a certain degree, and then beyond a certain point,
hit a critical mass.
Yeah, it's either that I can't provide any value because everything is exactly the same, there's nothing new I could say about it, or it becomes an amount that just becomes unattainable or unrelatable to people, and then it just almost serves the exact opposite intention as I meant for it.
Yeah, look, young men are pretty simple creatures. We need to have a pathway to get ahead, and I think a lot of people are angry because the traditional pathways just aren't working, and I get that. The problem with Gary and I, we were talking past each other. There was parts where we're talking about the system, and then we're talking about the impact of that on personal individuals, and because of the emotions were running hot, and a lot of curiosity evaporated out of the room at that point. Like the best conversations are where everyone is at the table with a spirit of curiosity. Let's see if we can come together. Because like an amazing conversation would have been, Gary, you've got a great point. Let's brainstorm how we could fix. Like, you want to fix the system? Let's talk about it. Like, and let's put all options on the table. Hey, Dan, you've got a good point that wealthy people can just get up and leave. Let's think about how we could potentially, fix the system in some way. So, and also let's look at what the underlying cause. The underlying cause is technology. You've got to keep that in mind. The reason this is all happening is we all used to live in walled gardens, like special little walled gardens. So a town was a walled garden. It was very, very unlikely that someone in Las Vegas had to compete with someone in Los Angeles, or had to compete with someone in the Philippines, or had to compete with a tech product in Silicon Valley. Right up until even 2010, that was probably not happening. But today, if you're setting up a business, a traditional business, it's very likely that there is a remote working solution, that there is a interstate solution, that there is a tech solution. So we pulled out the walls of the walled garden. We basically said, everyone here is in competition with everyone there. Because, by the way, in the last 20 years, incomes have exploded in the developing world. You go to southern parts of Bangalore or southern India, like they've gone from maybe $20, $30 a day to $10, $15 an hour in a fairly short space of time. Same as the Philippines. The Philippines economy is growing at 6, 7, 8% per year, and money's pouring into those places because of technology has made remote working a viable option. So if you imagine that the bathtub has a big divider in the middle, then this half's full and this half's empty. If you pull that divider out, it's going to equalize. Same sort of thing. If you have a protected class of people in the USA and the developing world or technology over here, you pull the divider out, this one's going to go down and this one's going to come up.
So you're saying that divider in that analogy would be technology, but technology...
No, the divider is geography. right? Geography kept everyone separate.
But the thing that pulls the divider out.
Yeah, the thing that pulled it out is technology.
Right. So that's kind of the solution that causes this fission between like those who are successful and those who are not successful. But technology is still somewhat of an external variable. Like if you were to draw this to a more internal approach, what would you say is the main variable that differentiates between those who are successful and those who are not? Would it be a motivation problem, a knowledge problem?
Let me start right at the beginning. Okay, so first thing you want to do is you want to work for a company that has less than 10 employees and you get to work with the founder. This is if you want, this is if you want to go on that journey. I'm not saying everyone should or can, but this is if you want to do this. So rule number one is get yourself a round of mentor. So you have to find yourself a job with a company that has less than 12 people. There's a founder. They have regular team meetings. You get first-hand contact with the founder. You're in an environment where you can see what's going on. The problem with big companies is they just put you over here, they isolate you, you have no idea how things actually work. Inside a company of less than 12 people, you actually get to see, this is how we make sales, this is how much we spend on ads, this is how we deal with customer complaints, this is how we keep customers happy. So all that stuff is visible to you, so you're going to learn a lot. There's three things you're trying to build. You're trying to build self-awareness, so you learn about yourself, commercial awareness, you learn about what makes money, and access to resources, you know where to get stuff. You know how to get technology, you know how to raise money if you need it, you know how to run ad campaigns if you want to run ad campaigns, you know how to do a joint venture deal, right? So self-awareness, commercial awareness, and access to resources. So you're trying to do that through work. The purpose of work now is to get those three things. That's why you go for those three things. Once you've got those three things, you then want to do little mini side hustles that are open and shut within 90 days. So side hustles with 90-day open and shut windows. So what you might do is say, I'm going to run a nightclub party, right? Or I'm going to sell 500 hoodies on Etsy, or I'm going to take on 3 clients who I can provide a service to. I'm going to do a setup service, right? So you're going to come up with little mini projects to see what works and what doesn't work. So for me personally, at my time when I was 18, I was selling roses door to door, and I would buy the roses for 40 cents and sell them for $4. That was one little side hustle. I did underage nightclub parties, so we did nightclub parties for 14 to 17-year-olds, and that was amazing. I did all the usual stuff like car washes, car sales, and all of those kind of things. So whatever it is, you're trying to come up with a 90-day experiment for you to actually see how you do in that space.
So you've identified it basically as a knowledge issue. If people had the proper knowledge, then they would be successful.
Yeah, so there's self-awareness, which is understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding your skills, understanding whether you're an A player, B player, or C player yet, right? So there's that. There's commercial skills, or commercial awareness and commercial skills, so your ability to execute things. And the reason you need those 3. You can't just have 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3. You have to have those 3 things.
How much of success is luck versus skill?
A lot of it's luck. But luck is, here in Vegas, we know that next to the word luck, you've got something called the odds, right? So you've got luck and you've got odds of luck happening. So if we go to certain casino games, you go to southern parts of Bangalore or southern India, like they've gone from maybe $20, $30 a day to $10, $15 an hour in a fairly short space of time. Same as the Philippines. The Philippines economy is growing at 6, 7, 8% per year, and money's pouring into those places because of technology has made remote working a viable option. So if you imagine that the bathtub has a big divider in the middle, and this half's full and this half's empty, if you pull that divider out, it's going to equalize. Same sort of thing. If you have a protected class of people in the USA and the developing world or technology over here, you pull the divider out, this one's going to go down and this one's going to come up.
So you're saying that divider in that analogy would be technology, but technology...
No, the divider is geography. Right, geography kept everyone separate.
But the thing that pulls the divider out.
Yeah, the thing that pulled it out is technology.
Right, so that's kind of the solution that causes this fission between those who are successful and those who are not successful. But technology is still somewhat of an external variable. Like if you were to draw this to a more internal approach, what would you say is the main variable that differentiates between those who are successful and those who are not? Would it be a motivation problem, a knowledge problem?
Let me start right at the beginning. Okay, so first thing you want to do is you want to work for a company that has less than 10 employees and you get to work with the founder. This is if you want to go on that journey. I'm not saying everyone should or can, but this is if you want to do this. So rule number one is get yourself a round of mentor. So you have to find yourself a job with a company that has less than 12 people. There's a founder. They have regular team meetings. You get first-hand contact with the founder. You're in an environment where you can see what's going on. The problem with big companies is they just put you over here, they isolate you. You have no idea how things actually work. Inside a company of less than 12 people, you actually get to see, this is how we make sales, this is how much we spend on ads, this is how we deal with customer complaints, this is how we keep customers happy. So all that stuff is visible to you, so you're going to learn a lot. There's 3 things that you're trying to build. you're trying to build self-awareness, so you learn about yourself. Commercial awareness, you learn about what makes money. And access to resources, you know where to get stuff. You know how to get technology, you know how to raise money if you need it, you know how to run ad campaigns if you want to run ad campaigns, you know how to do a joint venture deal, right? So self-awareness, commercial awareness, and access to resources. So you're trying to do that through work. The purpose of work now is to get those three things. That's why you go to work, for those three things. Once you've got those three things, you then want to do little mini side hustles that are open and shut within 90 days. So side hustles with 90-day open and shut windows. So what you might do is say, I'm going to run a nightclub party, right? Or I'm going to sell 500 hoodies on Etsy, or I'm going to take on 3 clients who I can provide a service to. I'm going to do a setup service, right? So you're going to come up with little mini projects to see what works and what doesn't work. So for me personally, at my time when I was 18, I was selling roses door to door, and I would buy the roses for 40 cents and sell them for $4. That was one little side hustle. I did underage nightclub parties, so we did nightclub parties for 14 to 17-year-olds, and that was amazing. I did all the usual stuff like car washes and garage sales and all of those kind of things. So whatever it is, you're trying to come up with a 90-day experiment for you to actually see how you do in that space.
So you've identified it basically as a knowledge issue. If people had the proper knowledge, then they would be successful.
Yeah, so there's self-awareness, which is understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding your skills, understanding whether you're an A player, a B player, a C player yet, right? So there's that. There's commercial skills, or commercial awareness and commercial skills, so your ability to execute things. And the reason, you need those 3. You can't just have 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3. You have to have those 3 things.
How much of success is luck versus skill?
A lot of it's luck. But luck is, here in Vegas, we know that next to the word luck, you've got something called the odds, right? So you've got luck and you've got odds of luck happening. So if we go to certain casino games, we know that, like, for example, a black or a red at the roulette wheel is almost 50-50. It's slightly off 50-50 because of the double green things, right? So that's called the odds. So even though success is largely about luck, there are things that you do to rapidly increase the odds. So you can go from a 1 in 50 chance to a 1 in 2 chance through certain behaviors. So luck is definitely going to play a role in everybody's success, but you can change the odds dramatically. So for example, sitting at home watching Netflix decreases your chances of any luck happening. There's very little luck that happens around watching Netflix. Going out and networking with a group of entrepreneurs who are having a meetup massively increases the odds of luck. Having a mentor who's super successful already rapidly increases the chances of luck happening. Reading books about how business works, listening to podcasts, watching videos, this is going to dramatically increase the amount of luck that happens in your life. So I can't guarantee that everything goes perfectly. It's not like 100% guarantee, but I can definitely say that you go from very, very low odds to quite high odds through behavior.
Do you think people are lacking in common sense? Because a lot of what you say seems to be common sense. Like, go and do these things. Don't sit at home and watch Netflix.
The issue with common sense is you've got to remember we went to a schooling system that was architected in the 1800s. About 1850 was when the schooling system really kicked in, and it was built around industrialized workforce. So the people who built the schooling system, they were trying to solve the problem, which was we need factory workers. We don't have enough factory workers. We need people who can come straight out of this environment and go to a factory environment. Prior to the schooling system, we used to do apprenticeships with our parents or our parents' friends. So it was very normal that you went to a church group and you kind of got the ABCs around Sunday school and church group and all that sort of stuff. There was something called dame schooling, which also happened around churches. So you got the very basics. But then you just pretty much, as soon as you were about 13, 14, you apprenticed. So you went and apprenticed working for, whoever your parents knew, or your parents or whoever they knew, and you did these apprenticeships. And it was very entrepreneurial. Most people had access to small businesses or family businesses or all that sort of stuff. So that's how it was up until 1850. They wanted to break our spirit and start on a bell, finish on a bell, don't talk back, do what you're told, don't team up, right? A big theme in school is don't form teams, right? So they do not want you, like when you take a test, you don't take the test with your 3 best friends and you work on, hey, do you know the answer to this? No. But in real life, of course you do this with 3 best friends. You form teams. So what happens is people go off and they try and do everything on their own rather than building a little team together. In school, if you get a bad grade for maths, they say you need to work on your maths, right? You've got to work on that weakness. In real life, you just get the CFO to do the maths and you go and work on your strengths. So you don't fix your weaknesses, you double down on your strengths in the real world. In the real world, if you are a disruptor or an attention seeker, then they put you on the front cover of Inc. magazine. But in school, if you're a disruptor or an attention seeker, they punish you for it. So there's all these things where these are natural behaviors that are very successful behaviors that you get punished for in school. And then you get out into the real world and say, hey, why isn't all this working? Like, why do I feel mismatched to the economy? And that's kind of what's happened.
I have two completely random off-topic questions, but I have to ask because I keep thinking about it, so we need to address it. Has anyone ever told you you look like Leonardo DiCaprio?
I've heard Leonardo DiCaprio. I've
Like
heard
weirdly, I don't know if it's this angle. It's like a little bit of hair. It's like the nose. Like
I get fat Justin Timberlake
Okay.
and Zelensky.
Oh, that's funny.
So if Justin
I
Timberlake,
think all of them together.
Zelensky, yeah.
And then also, why do people from the UK call it mass? They pluralize it.
Mass.
Like I've always heard that, and I've just never.
Listen, we invented English. You have to catch up with what we say. I'll tell you a fun thing about English, about the American. You know how you guys have Z's instead of S's, so like enterprise and all the words that end in. We used to do with an S.
Yeah.
You guys have a Z instead of an S.
Z.
Yeah, Z instead of an S. There was a massive wave of German immigrants. There were more German immigrants to the USA than English immigrants, and it was the Zs that came from Germany. So that's a little bit of the Germans came in and said we're going to do that with the Z.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So what role should the government play in all of this? It sounds like I was the same way. I thought school was a huge waste of time. I didn't want to apply any energy towards it. I didn't like. We actually, I went to a kindergarten briefly, and they pulled me out of the kindergarten. My parents did.
Was this recently? Because they should have pulled you out.
Yeah. Just like the other week, I was in kindergarten.
If you're not meant to be there.
But they wanted everyone to line up on a line to go to like the break.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to stand on the line.
Yeah.
And they kept telling me to get in the line, and I didn't want to stand on the line.
You're not going to be a good factory worker.
Right. But that ended up being an issue that I was sent to like the principal's office. They wouldn't stand on the line. My parents saw the issue in that and took me out of that kindergarten, put me in a different one. It was just like, the opposite.
We don't want you to conform, and that little moment probably formative for where you are today.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
But what role should the government play in all of this?
So we need to prepare people for the world that we're now going in. So there's definitely a change that is needed in the role of education. So let's start with that one. The old world of education is this long arc that you're going to do 15 years in education, then that ends. Then you're going to do about 25 years working for a manager, 10 years being a manager, 5 years being a leader, and then you're going to do 15 years of retirement and then die. That's the long arc that they want you to go on. That's kind of the business model of production of people from the industrial age. If we think about what's coming, it's going to be very high velocity economy with multiple projects going at any given time, and it's going to be notice a problem or notice an issue, get together with one or two other people to discuss and research it, come up with a minimum viable solution, test it, see if it scales, scale up the team, scale up the tech, exit it, either make enough money to never work again, or go on to the next problem and solve another problem. But if you imagine high velocity loops, in our career is going to be made up of lots of loops, and included in those loops is rapid learning and upskilling for the loop, and then moving on with something else. So in this little loop, I might need to learn the skills of public speaking, because that's what's required in that one. In the next loop, I might need to learn some technology skills. So we need to have an education system that acknowledges that it's going to be lifelong learning, lifelong problem solving, high velocity, like plural things on the go at any given time. You look at people who are doing well right now, they've got 5 or 6 things on the go. They have multiple businesses, they might be writing a book, they might be doing a podcast, they might be a supplier to one business, and they might have another business themselves. So what they're doing is they're executing on a high velocity, these little loops. So we need to study what are the dynamics of those fast, high velocity business or career cycles, and train people for those fast cycles, and say that your career is actually just going to be, in some projects you'll be the leader, and in some projects you'll be the supporter, and that's fine, right? You might have 2 of those projects going at once, where you're leading one and supporting on another. But we need an education system that prepares people for the world that we're going into. So that's definitely something that government should do. The main thing most governments need to do at the moment is actually step back and see what breaks and see what happens. Because all of our systems and institutions were built for a time that's come to an end, the industrial age, and now we need to see what actually works and what doesn't work. So, for example, you needed to regulate. In the USA it costs like 40 or 50 grand to have a hair salon license or something like this. It's like this crazy, like just to cut hair, and that was probably before Google star reviews, like Google reviews. Now you don't need to regulate hair salons. Google reviews regulates hair salons. No one's going to go to a hair salon that has 2-star average reviews. Right, so we have other systems that actually perform that function in society pretty rapidly.
I have a question for you. When is the last time you needed to see a doctor, but you pushed it off, made the excuse, I'm too busy, it'll heal on its own, or I don't even know which doctor to go to? I'm sure we've all been there. Booking a doctor's appointment can sometimes feel so daunting, but fortunately with our sponsor ZocDoc, there's no reason to delay because they make it incredibly easy to find and book a doctor who's right for you.
For those unaware, ZocDoc is a free app and website that allows you to search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors, and then you can click to instantly book an appointment. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for any medical needs you might have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. And then, once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment opens, choose a day and time that works best with you, and then click to instantly book a visit. Plus, the appointments made through ZocDoc typically happen fast, usually in just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. So stop putting up those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/iced to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/ICED, ZocDoc.com/iced with a link down below in the description. Thank you, ZocDoc, for sponsoring this episode, and now let's get back to the podcast.
I'm sure we've all dealt with bugs. Last summer, there was a trail of ants going all the way from the downstairs bathroom of my house up the stairs into my roommate's bedroom. It was disgusting. So when the sponsor of today's video, Pesty, sent us their kit, I was actually pretty interested to check it out.
Pesty is a do-it-yourself pest control that allows you to protect your home easily and for a quarter of the cost. Like other pest control companies charge $800 a year, but with Pesty, you can get started at just $35 a treatment with a customizable plan based on your location, climate, and bugs.
The kit came with everything: sprayer, mixing bag, pesticides, gloves, and really clear instructions. It's super straightforward and only takes about 10 minutes to apply, and the way that the instructions are and how they prepare everything just so simply made me realize that this is something anyone can do.
And what's great is that Pesty customizes the treatment for your location, so it targets the exact bugs that you're most likely to deal with. It gets rid of over 100 types: ants, spiders, scorpions, roaches, you name it. Plus, it's kid and pet friendly, and they back it with a 100% bug-free guarantee or your money back.
Protect your home from bugs with Pesty at pesty.com/ICH to get 10% off your entire order with the link down below in the description. It's also at pestie.com/ICH, 10% off your entire order.
Thanks again to our sponsor, Pesty, and now let's get back to the episode. So what about taxes? Because that was a big part of your debate with Gary. You were proposing lower taxes and getting encouraged business owners, and it's one of the reasons we moved to that was because of low taxes. They're very pro-business. And when I did a video saying that I'm leaving Los Angeles, I actually got an email from someone at the city council who was on like the business board thanking me for moving and said, we're so happy to have you. If there's anything we could do, please reach out. We're here. Like, I loved that. I couldn't believe it. LA, they'd say, well, if you want to do this, you have to register for this additional tax. I'm paying this 1% business tax in LA for no reason at all. It's just, and just every year.
And now look, and now they've cut off their nose to spite their face, because we all come to Vegas to come and see you, and your business is run from here, and you know so much of what they're missing out on. What we have to do is what's called going back to first principles. Going back to first principles is asking the question, what should a government be there for? Like, what's its purpose? And there are different answers to that question. So, you know, like the USA has traditionally said that the government there is to ensure individuals' rights, and it's all about freedoms and the rights of the individual and the rights of people to, for better or for worse, to have a free way of living. Right. So the founding fathers, they tried to create a system of government that said that you are primarily an individual with agency, and that you may screw up your own life, and that's on you. But the government, our job is to limit the powers of government so that you can screw up your life if you want to, or you can do well, but that's your life. You get to do it. In other parts of the world, they say the purpose of government is to make sure that we look after anyone who can't look after themselves, and that the government is there to have collective responsibility over the people. You can have less individual rights, but the government is going to provide more for you and all that sort of stuff. So the first thing is you have to go to first principles and say, what do we want our government to be? Like, what is the role of government? We need to ask basic questions like, what is an economy for? Like, is an economy for becoming successful? Is an economy for getting needs met? Is an economy for preventing poverty? Like, what is it that we're trying to do? Then you go back to best practices, like what experiments have been run and how do you apply the knowledge of those experiments? And you kind of got to rebuild it from the ground up, because we've had such a fundamental shift because of technology. This technology thing is not a small thing. This is the last time this happened was the agricultural age, where everyone worked in farming. 90% of people worked in farming, and then there was this one day where two guys rocked up with a tractor and they went, and in 2 days they plowed the whole field. 97 people stood there and went, hey, wait a second, that used to take us 2 months. And these guys just did it with a tractor in 2 days. What are we all going to do? The minute that tractor plowed the very first field, that was a turning point. That was a moment where life would never be the same again. As soon as that tractor works, we know that 97% of people in farming are out of a job. And it's only a matter of time. The clock is now ticking. So that's where we had to create a new economy with new rules called the industrial age. So we went from the agricultural age into the industrial age. We went from a feudal system and a colonial system into an industrialized modern system that we know. As soon as the very first AI writes a contract, we know that the legal profession is going to be profoundly impacted. As soon as the very first AI does a better job diagnosing than the general practitioner doctor, we know that we have fundamental. These are tractor moments, and we've had hundreds of tractor moments that have just happened in the last 5 years. As soon as the average individual person can outsource and have an assistant in the Philippines, holy smokes. right? That should send tingles down most people. It's like, whoa, okay. So are you saying that the bookkeeper, the accountant, the bookkeeper, the personal assistant, all of these roles that used to be in an office, these can now be in the Philippines at a fraction of the cost and just as good? Okay, that fundamentally changes the economy. So we've had all these moments where technology has made things available, and we've got to say, we've got to rebuild the economy with that in mind.
Where do you think is the best place in the world to start a business?
So at the moment, it depends. There's two types of businesses that you want. You either want a lifestyle business or a performance business. A lifestyle business is a business that's going to be typically between 1 and 5 million of revenue. It's going to have high 6-figure, maybe low 7-figure profit. It's built around fun, freedom, flexibility. It's going to be like a dream lifestyle business. It's going to look good on Instagram, and that's going to be a lifestyle business. A performance business is one that you intend to sell. So you're working backwards from exit. You're going to try and get tens of millions of revenue, 7-figure, maybe even 8 figures of profit, and you're going to try and sell that for a life-changing amount of money. So you have to work out, are you trying to build a business that is built for exit, or are you build a business that's built for Instagram, right? And lifestyle or performance, and then pick your spot there. The USA is still a phenomenal place. There's enormous amounts of money here, technology and support. If you're building a performance business, the USA is the leading ecosystem in the world, but it may not be the leading ecosystem for lifestyle businesses.
If you're doing a lifestyle business, where would you go? Places like Dubai.
Places like Dubai is amazing. It's difficult for you as an American citizen because you get taxed globally anyway. But for British people, we don't get taxed. If we leave the country, so many people are leaving because the number one way to avoid taxes in the UK is to just leave the country.
How does it work, by the way? Like, do you go to Dubai, make millions of dollars? Can you just come back to London and spend it?
It depends. Well, you can definitely come back and spend it, but you have to spend less than 90 days in the country, or else you're deemed to be a tax resident back in.
Yeah, but let's just say hypothetically you spend 5 years in Dubai, you make $20 million, and then you come back to London.
Yeah,
Are you good?
A lot of people. Yeah, you've paid taxes on that amount of money, which is not zero. You paid your zero, and now you're bringing money into the country. So you're now you're basically coming into the country as an external tax resident coming into it.
Why doesn't the United States do this? Aren't they the only country in the world that does this?
I think there might be 2 or 3 countries, but you're the main country that does this. You ring fence the population. I think it's historically because you had such a big economy that you didn't, you had such a disparity between the wealth of the United States and the rest of the world that someone figured out. I think it was Clinton who implemented this. It was like in the late 90s. It was Bill Clinton who came up with the idea of we're going to do exit taxes, and we're also going to do worldwide income taxes, because I think he saw the writing on the wall that people could just leave the USA, be slightly outside of the USA, and make all their money in the USA but live abroad.
Yeah. Speaking of all that, what are your thoughts on tariffs?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of things economists agree on, but most economists agree that trade wars are not good and tariffs are not good, unless they have like some really specific purpose. Like if you really, for a strategic reason, want a particular thing to be manufactured inside your borders. But broad blanket tariffs, I mean, that's, it's kind of like, imagine the economy is a very delicate machine. Like it's a very delicate like watch or something like that, and pieces putting in, people tweak and tweak and tweak. Putting massive tariffs on everything, that's like just hitting it with a baseball bat and seeing what happens.
Do you think we're on the brink of maybe a recession or some sort of financial apocalypse?
It could be. Great question. That's going to go in the trailer for this video, isn't it? Unfortunately, what Trump wants to have happen is probably not going to have happen. Like, it's very unlikely that manufacturing jobs are coming back to the USA. Anyone who brings manufacturing back to the USA, have you heard of the concept of a dark factory?
No.
Dark factory is essentially a factory that requires no workers other than some engineers who work on computers to manage the robots. So it's called a dark factory because they can theoretically just manufacture everything in the dark. I think there is there's a company that makes jeans, like Levi's jeans type thing, and it's something like hundreds of thousands of pairs of jeans that it produces, and it has like 12 employees. Because it just does everything from that principle. It's just totally fully autonomous. There's a steel plant in the USA that used to employ 30,000 people and produce 5 million tons of steel, and now does 8 million tons of steel, but with 2,000 people. Right? So that is examples of like manufacturing that didn't leave, it stayed here. It just doesn't need that many people anymore. So the idea that you can erect tariffs and then suddenly all these jobs come back, it's highly unlikely. It's very unlikely that the USA is ever going to be gluing shoes together and doing that at a great... suddenly there's going to be this amazing boom for Americans to glue the Nike sole onto the thing. Like, that strikes me as that's not going to happen.
So what do you think is the outcome to this? Because I have a hard time... People seem way too optimistic, and I'm... Just from what I'm reading online, it just doesn't seem like it's going to be easily solvable anytime soon.
Yeah. I think that each individual listening to this needs to say you have to stop thinking that the government's there to make your life better. Governments don't make your life better. Governments can make your life worse. Governments can sometimes be a good fail-safe to stop really bad things from happening. So like, you know, in the UK, we have emergency health cover and healthcare that is paid for by government. It's not great, but it certainly saves a lot of people from going bankrupt due to health issues like you guys have in this country. So the government can do things that make bad situations less bad, but they're not there to make your life better. They can be a safety net, but like they're not here to make your life better. You need to do what you can to make your own life better. You need to stop wanting the system to reward average and just say, I have to become extraordinary. I've got to become better. You know, like I know not everyone can do that, but unfortunately that is the world we're in right now. You've got to be part of a team that's going places.
So how do you think a recession would impact entrepreneurs?
For those who are playing by the Industrial Revolution rules, it's going to be devastating. And for those who are playing by the digital rules, it's going to be just fine. So, like, for example, one thing that doesn't have tariffs on it is services. And the clue is in the name, software as a service. So SaaS businesses from overseas can trade in here, and USA SaaS businesses can trade across borders as well. So software as a service is like one of these things that just, you know, easily done. And, you know, everyone's looking to get more software to run more efficiently. So, you know, your type of business, podcasts, in times of disruption, people listen to more podcasts. They want more coaching and consulting. You know, the other thing too is that your business, there's really no reason why you couldn't create a product for people living in Dubai and people who are living in, you know, Switzerland and people who are living all over the world. You could, you know, the funny thing is that when I ask people, how much do you want to earn for the year? And most people say something like 500,000 to 5 million. I go, okay, let's break that down into how many customers you need, paying how much. And it never turns out to be a big number. Like a lot of people, it's like, oh, I need 1,500 customers who pay $50 a month or something like that. So like, that's not going to be hard. If you build the right product, you can have 1,500 customers who pay $50 a month. There's 1.8 billion English speakers online. There's 70% of the world's population has fast internet. Every single country in the world now has an affluent base. There's someone there. Like, go to Vietnam now. There are very affluent areas of Vietnam. There are very affluent areas like, you know, Singapore, Hong Kong, Bali. Like, there are rich people everywhere now. So if you essentially said, oh, like my whole mission is really just to figure out how much I want to earn, create a product, launch the product, make sure that it can be available for anyone anywhere in the world. It solves a problem. Doesn't matter where you are, you can buy the product. Like, can I run through a few of my products I've launched? So I launched Score App, which is it's a software that creates software quizzes and assessments and waiting lists. So it's a software product, online diagnostics, online surveys, online quizzes, and waiting lists and mini courses. So it's a really cool little piece of technology. We've got at the moment over 8,000 paying customers, 120,000 free accounts, and they're in 150 countries. Super successful business, getting up there to be worth close to $100 million as a business. Like we launched that 5 years ago from scratch with no VC. Then I've got Bookmagic.ai. So that's an AI wrapper that helps people write their book. So it uses our intellectual property as to how to write a book and publish a book, combines it with ChatGPT, and creates essentially like a coaching program for you to get your ideas out and helps you with analogies and research and all that sort of stuff. It's still you writing, but it's supporting that process. So we launched that a year ago. It's currently growing 8% month-on-month compounding, so it's like just going like that at the moment. So Bookmagic.ai, we're about to launch Awards App, which is an AI that supports you to win awards. So if you've got a business and you want to win some awards, it tells you every award ceremony in the world that is relevant to your business, what the categories are. It shows you examples of who won it in the past and how their, you know, what their application would look like. It then helps you using AI to answer the key questions that the judge is looking for. So we're about to launch that one. So yeah, ultimately, like, you know, I'm finding it incredibly easy to just spin out little products and services that scale globally. Very rapidly, they start making 20, 30, 40 grand a month. You know, the bigger ones more like 700, 800 grand a month. Like, the world we're living in, AI is disrupting everything. It's cheaper and easier than ever to create software. A team of 10 people with AI built in take over, you know, you've got the opportunity to disrupt old industries, like so much opportunity. But you just got to move towards that opportunity.
But what about actually applying that, though, and using that towards practical things in your life, like owning a home, which right now is out of reach for a lot of people? How do you think that impacts everything? And do you think there is a solution to just housing prices going through the roof? Is it even worth it to buy a home anymore?
Well, that's a really great question. That's a really great question. There's an emotional thing about wanting to own a home. But with all the taxes and the prices of homes, especially the closing costs and buying and selling costs, you got to ask yourself the question, is it worth me wanting to own a home, and you may even ask that question like, do I even want to like be so wedded to a particular location? Because if one of your ancestors from 100 years ago came in a time machine to today, and they looked at our lives and they said, wow, these cameras, this equipment, these microphones, what the heck is YouTube? What the heck is Instagram? What's TikTok all about? And they're looking at all this amazing stuff. The thing that they would be completely uninspired by is houses and how much you get for your money. They'd be like, oh, like they're the same houses we lived in. These are boring houses. You guys haven't really done much with houses. This is like, most of these houses look the same as our houses. They're not floating or doing anything, and they're super expensive. And then they might ask the question, why would you want to be pinned down to one location? Because if the government gets a little grabby, don't you just want to hand back the keys and go somewhere else? So, like, for sure, like, do that. Once again, I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying here's how to play the cards that you're dealt. The way to play the cards that you're dealt is that you do a couple of things. You build businesses that become wildly profitable first. So you build profitable business that we get part of a business team. And if you're going to get into real estate, you get properties that you can rent out to people, and you can become a landlord first. And then there comes a moment where you can either close out those properties and then buy yourself a family home, or you can close out one of the businesses and buy a family home. The majority of people who can actually buy a family home right now, they either A, start with being a landlord first, even though they're renting their own house, or B, they're running a successful business, and then through closing those things out, they can then buy a big family home. And a lot of people pay cash. So like, you can sell your company for quite a lot of money and then buy the big house if you want to from there. But with that said, and I know I'm going to get so much hate in the comments, like I'm aware that this really triggers people because it's an emotional thing about owning a home. I'm not saying this is right. I'm saying these are the cards that we're dealt. So the upside of this is that it's never been cheaper to rent amazing houses. And you enjoy living there. And if things change, you just say, here's the keys, I'm going to go live in Costa Rica. Or here's the keys, I'm going to go a different state.
That's what I think right now. A lot of people reach out to me and they say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this house. I really do my best to try to talk them out of it. Like, I think that could backfire if in 30 years from now that home is worth 10x. Yeah. And I was like, oh man. But in the short term, over the next few years, it's so much cheaper to rent. Like, I'm looking at the cost of buying, and the house might be like $6,000 a month.
And the taxes.
But I'm like, yeah. Or you could rent the exact same house down the street for $3,000 a month and just save the difference.
The other thing too is our lives change in really big ways. So like our grandparents' lives didn't change massively across 4 years. But if you go to today, you're probably in your early 20s going to want to share accommodation with friends, where you all live together in a cool place together. Then you might form a relationship and you want to have like a cool trendy flat that you live with in a cool area, and it's like a 2-bedroom flat with you and your girlfriend or whatever. Then you might break up and go back to share accommodation. Then you could get another flat again with another fiance this time. And then you live in this really cool inner city location. Then you have your first child, so you want to live a little bit out and have a 3-bedroom house. And then you might have another child and you say, okay, now I want a 4-bedroom house. And then you might have another child and you want a 5-bedroom house, let's say. And then maybe you get an amazing job opportunity or a business opportunity interstate. So you go, hey, you know what? Time to go to Austin, Texas, because that's where the opportunity is. So our lives are very different to our grandparents' lives. So one of the best things you may benefit from is just having the flexibility where you're not just hanging on to this house all the time. Now, with that said, you can then, if you want to own property, if you want to be in the real estate game, it's very easy to buy properties that you don't live in because the reason they give you the loan is based on the rent. So when you buy a house you're going to live in, they want the deposit and they want to know how much you earn from a job. When you buy a house that you're going to rent out, they want the deposit and they want to know what the average rental value is of that property. So because the house is generating its own mechanism for paying the bills, you're buying a house that comes with an income stream. So, it's kind of easy to say, oh, okay, I'll buy a 1-bedroom inner city apartment that needs fixing up, I'll fix it up, and now I'm going to rent that out.
Yeah. The problem, though, these days is that it's so expensive to buy that you're renting at a loss, and you're competing against the other person who bought their home at a 3% mortgage and has a really low tax basis and really low overhead, so they can charge just above that just to break even because they just want something easy, versus the person who buys today is going to have a payment that's 50% higher and they have to charge higher, but they can't compete with people with 3% mortgages.
I agree with you. It kind of sucks. So. It kind of sucks. Look, you're also up against people like myself who I just park money in real estate in terms of like I have no expectation of it providing a return. It's just a good place to stay above inflation.
Well, why not do treasuries, or why not park it
do
in
all of
Bitcoin or something?
You could do all of those things. So like you can have some treasuries and you can have some like if you end up in a place where you get a liquidity event, like you sell a company, you're probably going to have S&P 500, you might have some treasuries if you're older and you need the security, you might have some houses for emotional reasons. So a lot of people I know, they want to have a house or a couple of houses as like fallback positions. If the worst should happen, or for their kids. Maybe they have 3 kids. They say, I'm going to have 3 kids. So if I die, each child will get an apartment to live in, or something like that. So, you know, once you hit that category, you have a diversified portfolio.
What are your thoughts on the U.S. economy? Do you think that it's possible that the U.S. dollar could lose its dominance?
Well, let's start with the strengths of the US. There's some fundamental strengths that are hard to negotiate. The US has the most amazing geography. If you're China, you have 14 land borders with other countries. So if you go and try, like, go this way, it's the Philippines. Up here, it's Japan. It's here, it's Korea. Over here, it's Vietnam. Over here, it's Russia. It's Mongolia. So India, right? Tibet, right? So you've got all of these countries, and you've got historical grievances with 14 different countries, and all of them are shit scared of you and have militarized borders, all this sort of stuff. So China, for all of their strengths, cannot get out of that little ring fence because they've got 14 land borders. You know, the USA has got massive ocean on the left, massive ocean on the right, friendly neighbor up north, manageable situation, one border that's manageable, and that's it. Like, that's the USA. You also have energy security and food security. So if all things go custom, you can make enough food and enough energy to run your country independently without importing a thing. Now, if you go to China, 40% of their calories are imported, most of their energy is imported, and all of the energy imports have to come by boat through an island chain. And at any point around India, Malaysia, Indonesia, at any of those points, if you were to somehow stop those boats, that's it, lights go off. So geography is one of the things that the USA just has hugely, it's impossible to overstate how much of an advantage that is. That is the ultimate advantage on any other country.
Do you have any predictions for, like, the U.S. economy? You think that, like I said, that it could ever lose its dominance with the U.S. dollar?
I'm a really big believer that you should focus on what you can control and ignore big things like this for most people. So when you focus on the economy, see, your brain can only adopt so many projects at any given time. One of the easiest ways to totally derail your own personal success is to worry about things that are above your pay grade. So you need to play the cards that you're dealt. If you are sitting there worrying about the economy, it sets up a dynamic of worrying about something that you have no strings to pull. You have nothing to do with the economy. It's this massive boogeyman, this huge, complex system. There are really good arguments for the economy going like this. There are really good arguments for the economy going like this. And what you have to do is say, all of that is irrelevant. It's my job to create my own personal freedom. It's my job to create my own success. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? Where is the best place for me to be? And block out the news, block out Twitter, block out all of that stuff. Spend time developing your own strategy, right? Because in any economy, there are successful businesses and unsuccessful businesses. Even if the economy were to completely tank, there will still be a restaurant that has a lineup out the front, and that restaurant's making profit. There will be a business coach who's got 12 business coaching clients, and they're making $1 million a year because they've got 12 clients who pay $100,000 a year. There will be a lawn care business that is the best lawn care business, and it's making $400,000 a year. There will be someone who goes and buys up all these businesses out of bankruptcy, and they will say, oh my goodness, the economy collapsing was the biggest thing that in my life. This changed my whole family's life. We're generationally wealthy because of that thing that happened.
What are the main things that distract you right now, and how do you eliminate those?
So the human brain, it's fun to think about the brain. I don't know if this is true or not, but it's fun to think about the brain in 3 levels. There's reptile mode, there's autopilot mode, and there's visionary mode. So reptile mode is fight, flight, freeze, freak out, right? So it's the worst of you. Throw tantrums, raise your voice, get angry. It's that base level emotion, and you know what it's like to be reptile. Like, think back to the last time you had a reptile moment. Would you say
Graham has them anytime someone cuts in front of him.
Okay.
I don't really care about that so much.
His reptile moment is like getting cut off, right?
Yeah.
So in that moment, do you think you gain IQ or lose IQ points, right? Of course you lose IQ points.
Yeah, that explains a lot.
Yeah, and you say stuff that you have to apologize for later, and it's not your best self. So reptile mode is a very real thing, and it shortcuts every other part of the brain, and you have a 10-minute reptile mode moment. Autopilot is repeat the past. There's a big part of the brain that just says, if I walked down this path yesterday and there were bananas, then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and walk down that path and get the bananas again, and I'm just going to keep doing it. And eventually, I don't even know why I'm walking down that path. I just walk down that path every day, right? So this is the autopilot mode, where you're not really thinking. You're just allowing momentum to capture you. Then there's visionary mode. And visionary mode is where you get a big picture. It's often in the shower or bath. It's often when you're driving. It's often when you're traveling, when you're on a plane, when you're on holiday, and you start to think, why don't I call that person and see if we could do a deal together? Or, hey, wait a second, so-and-so we talked about sponsoring something. We could get a sponsorship deal going. Or, hey, I know someone who's amazingly talented. They could join the team. Why haven't I asked them to join the team yet? Right? So you have those kind of big picture connected dot moments. So all success comes from being in visionary mode. And what you have to do is, the first thing to become way more successful is to recognize, am I in reptile, autopilot, or visionary mode? Where do I spend my time? So throughout a given week, most people spend most of their time in autopilot and reptile and very little time in visionary. So the reason I say tune out from macro is because all things that you can't control force you into reptile mode. You cannot think, because they're outside of your control, all they can do is make you fearful. And fear is the thing that robs you of IQ. So what you want to do, here's a couple of ways to get into visionary mode. Go somewhere new that's really high up and you can look at the whole city and you can actually observe the whole city. So go to a physically high place and just sit and journal from a high place. Turn off the phone. Stop watching the news. Log out of the social media. Actually log out of it, and see if you can just give yourself some time. Go for a daily walk, but without headphones in. Not listening to anything. Take a notepad and a pen. Even if you can, just leave your phone behind and just allow yourself that time to just think and just dream a little bit. Give your brain a challenge before you go to bed at night. So have a notepad by the side of your bed and write down a question that you want to have the answer to, and just say, while I'm sleeping, I want to be thinking about this in the background. And it's incredible. The following morning, you get an answer to these things. So and also be around people who are at the next level. So if you can, if you've got a career that you're unhappy with, and you start spending time around people who've got a career they're happy with, that's going to put you into possibility mode. If you are doing $1 million and you hang out with someone who's doing 10 million of revenue, that's going to put you into the mode of possibility. So you want to do whatever you can to be in visionary mode.
What's a business you dislike, even though it's wildly profitable?
I'm not a fan, for me personally, of anything that is fast-moving consumer good that creates a lot of plastic or waste, or something that is just it's bad for the environment. I hate volume-based businesses. My personal thing is I don't like volume businesses for me personally to run. Any business that requires tens of thousands of sales every week in order to stay in business, not my favorite. I also I really want, there's only a narrow set of things that I do like. I like recurring revenue. I like digital assets. I like build it once, scale it, get it right once, and then, onboard more people. I like things that can be run with teams of 30 people, and we can punch well above our weight with a team of 30. These are the types of things that I really enjoy.
What about side hustles? Are they ever worth it?
Sure, but when you say worth it, they're worth it to get that self-awareness. They're worth it to get commercial skills. And do it from a place of fun. If it feels like an obligation, probably not, but, it's kind of fun to do some side hustles. Me and my kids, we build a lemonade stand out the front of the house and sell some lemonade, and it's kind of fun to.
What tricks do you do when you're selling lemonade like that?
Oh, you don't need tricks with 7-year-olds. They just dance around and say lemonade, get your lemonade, and everyone comes and.
So why don't you have kids in front of every business, just repping the business, trying to get customers?
That might be illegal. Well, because we're doing it not to make money, we're doing it to learn. But look, side hustles are great. What are you thinking of when you think of side hustles?
I think of people doing something that's usually wildly unprofitable that they spend hours and hours and hours on for $10.
Side hustles are great for learning. So the idea behind the phase 1 is working for a mentor. Phase 2 is doing some side hustles just to feel like what it's like to be
business owner, customer service,
doing
a product.
Exactly. So it's just that building your confidence that you can do this. So if you know that the purpose of this side hustle is not to become a millionaire, it's to actually just lay some foundations of what it's like to be in business, and that it's especially open and shut 90 days, where it starts and finishes in 90 days, those are the best side hustles. And then you evaluate, what did I learn from this?
What are your best ways to come up with ideas in terms of creating a business, or how to spot trends for demand for certain things?
Okay, so a great business is going to come from 3 angles. So angle number 1 is something I'm passionate about. Angle number 2 is something that solves a problem. Angle number 3 is something that is people are paying for, there's money involved. So it's either going to be passion, problem, or payment.
Just or,
right? Well, great business opportunities are the 3 converging. So I'm passionate about this, it solves a problem, and the market has money to spend, they're going to pay. So what we're trying to do is we start with any one of those 3 things. And what we're trying to do is come up with a list of 10 business opportunities that we can then research. The goal is not to get stuck on one idea, it's to have 10 ideas and say which one's the best of these 10. And to essentially conduct fast and cheap experiments to see which one is going to be the best one. So what I would love to do is, if I was doing this with you, we'd come up with 10 ideas, and I'd give you a series of ideas based on passion, payment, or problem. We'd come up with our 10 ideas, then we'd pick 3 to test. And what we'd do is we'd launch a landing page, and we'd set up a landing page that says, we're going to be launching a new business that does X, Y, and Z. It's for this type of person that solves these types of problems. We'd have some images on the page, and we'd say, join the waiting list, and you will get exclusive access into a WhatsApp group for people in the same situation as you. You'll get some great content, and you'll get an initial discount off the product when it launches. You'll get a launch special offer. So join the waiting list. When you join the waiting list, we're going to have a button that says join waiting list, and then it's going to ask 5 questions. which best describes your current situation, which best describes your outcome that you're looking to achieve, what is the top thing that has prevented you from getting this outcome in the past, how much do you want to, how much are you prepared to spend, and what else do you want us to know? So those are the big 5 questions that you would ask. Then they join the waiting list, and we begin warming that group up. Now, my first thing that I want to do for launching any business is I have a minimum threshold of can I get 150 people to join that waiting list, and how hard was it to get 150. Now, if I've got 3 opportunities that I'm testing, it's going to be the case that one gets 50 people, one gets 100 people, and one gets 200 people, and it's like, okay, this one, with the same amount of effort, is 4 times more people are interested. So the data can then support which opportunity to go for.
Yeah, unknowingly, I did something similar to this that I was telling you about. But I wanted to create this entrepreneur meetup, and I posted on Instagram to see hey, any established business owners interested in doing something like this a few times a year. And I just posted that with the Google Sheets so I could get some data on who's applying, because I had no idea. And we ended up getting over 2,000 people applying. And so we started to top the list with people who self-reported, and we loosely verified that were earning more than $10 million a year in revenue, or had a business that you could see very clearly this is doing well. And we just talked to them.
Yeah,
we just called them.
Yeah.
And we did an hour call with basically each person, vetted them, and we found 15 people who are the best of the best at what they do throughout various fields of real estate, cryptocurrency, various finance industries, SaaS businesses. A few had physical products. And it was incredible to put these people together in a room and to see how they interact and what excites them, and just talk to them on a deeper level.
And you charge more for that?
Yes.
Yeah. So out of those 35, are you happy to say how much revenue you did off the back of that?
It's in the 6 figures of revenue. Now, in fairness, we are reinvesting a substantial amount of that back into the group.
Yeah.
So not really looking at this from a profit perspective.
There's nothing wrong with profit.
But selfishly, I do get to meet people that ordinarily I wouldn't be able to meet, and I do these events.
You get paid to have your network. So there's
100%.
There's a couple of things I love about that story. Thing number 1 is that you just launched the waiting list, or what you called an expression of interest list.
I just want,
right? So expression of interest. So you didn't organize anything, you didn't spend anything, you didn't put deposits down for anything, you didn't spend any money. It's just you went to Instagram or you went to LinkedIn and you said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Give me an expression of interest if you'd be up for this. You got more than 150 people who said, yes, I'm interested in that. So well over that, obviously 2,000. So it's a great result. So the first test I call a 150 test. 150 test is can I get more than 150 on a list? The second test I like to do is called a 30 test, which is talk to 30 and find out what 30 have to say.
Yeah.
So without even knowing this,
that's fine.
So my method is 150 test, 30 test, 150 on a list, talk to 30 and find out specifically what they're looking for.
That's interesting you said the 30. We talked to 30 people and we picked up the 30, there's 15 that we could tell were a good fit. The other 15 weren't quite as not the match that we're going for.
But what you also know is that roughly half the people who meet a certain criteria are ready to go ahead. So that also tells you you've got another 200 people on the list who meet that criteria. So there's another 100 sales. You just pick up the phone and talk to the next 200. And
if you guys are interested, there is a link in the description where you could apply.
Fantastic. There you go. Isn't it funny? It's that easy. You know,
it was also interesting speaking with a lot of these people because above $10 million a year, it seemed like they had a lot different problems that they wanted solved than the person in the $100K to $1 million price point.
Of course, there's 6-figure problems. So to break it down, the first 6 figures comes down to 4 problems called chaos: concept, audience, offer, sales. Then the 6-figure to 7-figure journey is about establishing a key person of influence to be the front person of the business, and they have to pitch, publish products, profile, and partnerships. So that's the key person of influence problem. After that, we've got the challenge of aligning teams and developing teams, putting in a tech stack, developing assets, right? So there's all of this kind of scalability, building out a product ecosystem, building a team and a culture and a brand. So now this is where business gets a bit tricky. So 4 things: chaos, next key person of influence, then the more grown-up problems after you hit 10 million.
Yeah.
So you've just broken it down and you figured that out effortlessly. A lot of people are going to be cross and they're going to say, oh, easy for you because you've got this whopping big brand. I don't have a brand. What you must do if you don't have a brand is you need to start building a brand, but also partnering with someone who already has a brand. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's got 1 million followers, but if you partnered with someone who's got 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, you could replicate a version of that. So the problem with being someone who has tens of thousands of followers is that your time is spread so thin. You're looking for people to come and join your team and partner with you. So if someone, I'm not saying you because you get approached all the time, someone who's imagine you with 100,000 followers, someone comes to you and says, hey, look, I'm prepared to do this whole mastermind thing. I've got a way of structuring it. I've researched it. Here's how we do it. All that's required of you is to do a LinkedIn post. And from that LinkedIn post, I'll take over and I'll do all the sales calls. I'll put everything in place.
Well, it's funny because that's exactly how the idea of this entire group, it's called the Index, came to be. Someone paid for a consulting call. And I almost never do consulting calls, but if someone reaches out with just a good enough, just hey, I want to pick your brain on this topic, and they check out I'll do them. And this guy was different. His name is Justin.
Mm-hmm.
He reached out without any questions. He just said, I just wanted to chat and just talk. I was like, okay, really? For 45 minutes? Yeah, sure. And he was asking me questions about, like, what would you do if you had the opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think your enjoyment is? Just random questions. And he asked me if you could do any business right now, what would you want to do? And I told him this kind of like meetup networking idea. And he took it to heart and then came back a week later with the whole thing done. It's like, hey, we came up with a name. Here's how we could do it. I have like this figured out. All
impressive.
you need to do now is just, if you want to test the proof of concept, just post on Instagram. And I was like, yeah, I'll just see. Because maybe there's not enough interest in this. And then we could just shut it down right then and there. But it was just from that.
So there you go.
From one consultant.
Yeah, so you know, people might be listening to you and say, well, I can't do what you do, but you can definitely do what Justin did.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, awesome. Entrepreneurship's like, it's fun. It's so much fun. Yeah. It's good. It's
Yeah,
fun.
even this podcast, by the way, was Jack's idea. So, like, Jack came to me in beginning of 2020 with this idea that, like, Graham, you should start a podcast because this is a great way for you to connect with your audience. I had no intention of starting a podcast. And Jack said, all you need to do is show up and give me an hour of your time once a week and I'll take care of everything else.
I did the same
and turn into this.
with Bookmagic.ai. That was a team who came to me and approached me with that. Awards App was Donna, who came to me and approached me with that. Score App was my business partner, Steve, who basically started brainstorming with me. So, like, all of these amazing opportunities, like, people come, like, the other thing you can do as well is if you want to approach someone very high profile, you can approach them as a team. So if you put together 3 or 4 people who are an amazing, ready to go team, but you're missing that key person of influence who can be the face of it. If you show up with cavalry, if you say, hey, look, so-and-so's got great sales background, so-and-so's got great finance background, so-and-so's got great ops background, the 3 of us are going to build this business with you as the face of it, you're going to earn a ton of money just by being the face of it. By the way, that was my very first business that I launched at 21. That's how I did it. I paid 5% of revenue to a guy who was the face of my business. And myself and 3 people, we built that into, we did 1.3 million in the first year, and 5% of that went to the guy who was the face of the business because he was well known in the industry. And we paid him, I think we paid $5,000 speaking fee once a month. And that, you know, that was obviously about 60 grand, and then we paid another 65 grand for 5% of 1.3 million. So he earned 125,000 in year 1, but we got 1.3 million. And I remember having about 400,000 worth of profit off the back of that after year 1. But all of that was because I'd done a deal with someone who was the face of the business.
So where do you go to get your advice from?
I've got some amazing mentors. My mentors now are people who typically have sold businesses for 200 million or more, because that's kind of my next mindset. Like that's my next milestone. Some big exits. So I'm, you know, I've got mentors who have been in private equity. I've got mentors who have sold tech companies strategic exits. I've got some amazing wealth managers who come from the world of wealth management. So I just kind of crowdsource a group of people who I, you know, regularly meet up with. But I'm a big believer that people are smarter than me. Like let's like, business is a team sport. You know, you want to treat it like a team sport. You don't want to try and do everything on your own.
What do you think about work-life balance versus hustle culture? There's a large population that say you have to work 24/7 if you want to be successful, and a lot of people detest that. Did you have to put in those hours when you were first getting started? And do you think that's a sacrifice that needs to be made in order to be exceptional in business?
I'm curious. You're 26. You've spoken to a lot of successful people. What's your initial take on this?
My initial take is that you do need a couple years, realistically, where you're working some outsized hours and making some pretty hard sacrifices. But it also depends on the industry you're in and also your aptitude. Like if you're someone that is just super intelligent and you can leverage things better, then maybe it will require less sacrifice. But you usually need to know, like, basically top down how your business is going to work, have your hands dipped in every single operational thing, and that all takes just a lot of time for anyone.
That's a great answer. That was true for me. I almost feel like when you're getting something big going, imagine like this big concrete wheel, and in the early days, it's so much energy and effort to just get it to move. And it takes 12, 14 hours a day to just get that thing to move a few inches. But once it starts to spin, you can just tap it and it will keep spinning. So like for me, my early days, because I started in my 20s, early, like 21 was my first company, I rolled out of bed in the morning and I worked, I had breakfast, I worked, I had lunch, I worked, I had dinner, I worked, and then I went to bed. And I did that for maybe 10, 12 years. Where I am today is total ridiculous work-life balance. As in, like, I just have fun all the time. And I've got 7 different companies and they're all successful and they're doing really well and they're profitable. I can start new things. And because I put that energy to get the flywheel going in the beginning, I can now just go tap, 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 tap. That goes. You know, someone says, oh, we need to solve this problem. Oh, okay, I know someone who can solve that problem. So I built a network, I built up some skills, I built some momentum. And now, once that flywheel's spinning, it would actually take a lot of effort to slow it down.
So if you were starting over today and you want to make $1 million, how would you do it?
Well, you got to remember that trying to make $1 million from the existing economy is incredibly hard because the whole economy is not built for that. the way to make $1 million is to bring something into the economy to create something, to be creative force, to do something, to be the organizing force for something new that didn't exist. The two things that I would do is I would work really hard to get the data to validate a good idea, and then I would go to investors and I would say, we're going to launch this idea, and it's going to be initial seed investment. We're going to raise $500,000 at a 2.5 million valuation. And I would show them the financial forecast, I'd show them the initial data, the waiting lists, the data that we've collected, all of that sort of stuff. I might go and pitch to 10 investors who each put in 50 grand, or 20 investors who put in 25 grand, or 50 investors who each put in 10, but I'm going to try and raise that $500,000 at a maybe $2.5 million valuation. And as soon as that round is done, I'm a millionaire, aren't I? Right? So I'm now worth $1 million on paper. So provided I can go in with that, now what I can do with that $500,000 is I can hire a couple of really good people. We can execute on the plan. We can grow the thing forward. Next thing we can do is raise 1.5 million at a 10 million valuation. I can take a little bit off the table, perhaps.
There are a lot of people out there that don't have those connections. They're not in those circles.
Can I be brutal? You've got to stop thinking about the worst case scenarios. Like everyone, like if you're always thinking about, but what about the person who's got they don't have shoes and they live in a puddle and they eat worms? It's like you can always make the case that there's someone who just can't do it. Okay, fine, they can't do it, right? The people who are listening to this podcast, they're going to be sick of, they're going to sit there and say, but I'm not in a puddle, I don't eat worms, I can do this. Your people, your listeners are people who are ambitious, they're pumped, they're ready for it, they're up for it, they're smart. If they're listening to this podcast, they're smart people. We don't necessarily have to take care of everyone. Everyone's got to run their own race. Unfortunately, some people are just not going to make it. I hate to say it, that's just the truth. So it's not my problem to fix every single person's thing. Here's what, for me personally, I talk to people who want to be entrepreneurs. I talk to people who are entrepreneurs. I talk to people who are already trying stuff. They're reading books. They're listening to podcasts. I wouldn't be talking to someone in Chicago who lives in a puddle and eats worms and has no shoes. That's not my guy. That's not my person. I talk to people. I'm on this podcast because you attract listeners who 8% of them have more than 10 million, right? So if you're constantly doing this, and the reason I'm being a pain in the ass about this is I see this all the time, and it's oh, but what about this person? What about that person? I don't know. Right? I can't solve for every single person. Here's what I do know. If you get a critical mass of successful entrepreneurs, they're going to lift the whole economy up. Right? So let's say that person is going to be better off because an entrepreneur who's in their city is growing, and that entrepreneur hires a team, and that team eat at a cafe, and that cafe needs a worker, right? And suddenly the economy's moving. The economy's stuff's happening. I talk to the engine room of the economy. The engine room of the economy creates second order and third order consequences that lifts everybody else up. Am I saying that everybody can be in the engine room? No, not everyone can be in the engine room. Everyone can benefit from the engine room firing on all cylinders. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'm curious though.
Am I going to get hate?
No, the reason why I ask questions like this is not necessarily because I agree or I disagree with, kind of what I'm inferring by the question. It's just because I feel like a lot of people that are watching are probably wondering that. And so to those that may have an adverse reaction to what you just said, do you have anything to say to them, or do you think that it's kind of just, it is what it is?
Congratulations for listening to the podcast. That's what I'd say. You're on a path. Get a job, right? You're not going to be an A player from day one. You're not going to be a black belt. You don't walk into a martial arts school and become a black belt on day one. You go and learn from black belts. In fact, you don't even learn from black belts. The black belt teaches the advanced class. The green belt teaches the white belt class. So if you know that you're starting out from scratch, it's just unrealistic that you're just going to be able to come in and say, oh, I listened to one podcast with Daniel and now I want to be a millionaire. No, you're going to get a job first, and you're going to work for a small dynamic team. My advice for anyone who's in that situation is work for a company that has less than 10 people, because then you're going to learn what goes on. I learned so much working at McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's for a few years, and as a 15-year-old, I'm running a $2 million a year restaurant. And the store manager was 22 years old, and a bunch of 15, 16-year-olds, we're just cranking out, 40,000. It must have been more than 2 million, but we're cranking out thousands of dollars in lunchtime rushes, and we're making food and selling food and doing all this. We're following systems and procedures, and we're seeing how money gets shared. I was there to learn. I went to McDonald's to learn how McDonald's runs, and I did 3 years just learning everything I could about McDonald's. I can still tell you all sorts of things about it. 54 nuggets in a bag. I can tell you how hot the toasters are. This is from 25 years ago. The training was that good.
Why does it seem like I don't see 16-year-olds working at McDonald's anymore? Everyone that I see is 30, 40 years old.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't been in a McDonald's for a long time. I know that Starbucks spends more money training their staff than on their coffee. So go work at a Starbucks, but even better, go work for an entrepreneur. Go work in a small business that has less than 10 people, so you can learn the ropes. We can spend a lot of time talking about how hard it is at the bottom. The thing that raises the bottom is the engine room. We need an engine room. So if you're ready to be part of the engine room, that's going to lift everyone up anyway. Also, I hate to be an absolute arse about this. I have a really good friend who's a quadruple amputee, and he lost both arms and both legs on one day. And woke up at age 19 as a quadruple amputee, being a super healthy, fit, amazing, like 19-year-old, and then the next day he's got no arms and legs. And he has gone on to get married to a beautiful woman, have kids. He started a rehabilitation clinic for amputees. He's one of the best in the world. People fly from all over the world to go to his clinics. It's more than 7 figures of revenue. He's a best-selling author. He's an international public speaker. He is a absolute killer. And every excuse that you can come up with, like he just didn't accept it. He's just like, okay. And he's not from a wealthy family. Like he's not from some family that just said, oh, we're going to pay for everything. He just was sitting there. He was sitting there on the couch watching endless television shows about a few weeks after he got home from hospital. And he said, this is not going to be a good life. Like, I have to make a decision. Like, he realized no one's actually going to come and save me. No one's going to come and figure this out for me. If I don't do this, this is on me. And he had this vision where he said, it's either the worst thing that's ever happened to me or the best thing that has ever happened to me. And he's cheeky because he says, I would have been working in a corporate accounting firm, like my brothers. His brothers work in, like, the big corporate accounting firms. He's like, now I live the best life ever. He's like, if I had to choose to get my limbs back, but then go and work in that accounting firm, he's like, I think I would keep the amputee.
Would you say you're happier having more money?
Yeah. Yes.
At what point would you say the money kind of has a diminishing return on your happiness?
I don't know. Somewhere like, these are kind of cheeky questions, but because this will get a lot of hate. I don't know. Like when you start earning 50,000 to 100,000 a month, most things are pretty good in terms of like you can do almost like the economy is not built for people who. The economy is built for people who earn 75 grand a year. So everything's priced at 75 grand a year. So everything is essentially made to be affordable for people who are on normal wages, provided you don't go into super luxury environments that are built for the super rich. In the normal world, if you're earning, $500,000 to $1 million a year, like the world's pretty much your oyster. You can, do all those sorts of things. I don't know. I haven't hit that point. More money's great. I don't understand all these people who are like, boo-hoo, I made money, but it didn't make me happy. It's like rubbish. It did not make you happy. Right? You removed all the things that made you unhappy for starters. You might still be left with some things that money can't solve. Money can only solve money problems, but most problems can actually dramatically improve. One thing I will tell you about, I was super happy when I was broke. So I moved out of home. I was living on a concrete, I took a garage floor, put a carpet on it, put a mattress on top of that. So I was 18 years old 1 week, and I was so broke that I would go to the vegetable and butcher shop and ask for the off-cut boxes and what can you give me for a couple of dollars? And I'd make that.
Sound like Graham last Tuesday.
Make that into a soup. Yep. And like my hobby was walking in nice neighborhoods because like that's all I could afford, just walking. But at one time I was pizza delivery driver, barman, door-to-door salesperson, running my own nightclub parties, trying to do university, crazy stuff, and doing everything I knew how to do. I was making barely enough money just to just survive, and I could only really survive on things like canned tuna and pasta, and I learned how to make this canned tuna pasta dish with some tomato sauce in it, horrible stuff, right? But I figured out how to make really cheap food, and I got a parking ticket, and I had to eat just non-stop Special K breakfast cereal for a week so that I could afford the parking ticket. So I've been there. But the thing I will tell you about myself is I was super excited because I'm like, this is just part of the journey. I'm gonna be flying one day. I'm gonna remember what it was like to start at the pedal bottom.
So you always knew you were gonna be rich.
I was optimistic. Yeah, I was super optimistic.
You had the confidence.
Yeah, I'm also I'm quite a happy person.
See, that's the thing. I mean, I was trying to isolate the one thing that I feel like differentiates a lot of the people that are successful versus are not successful, and it seems like you're coming from the perspective that it's knowledge. Like they need to go in and get the experience, be with the right circles. I have a feeling that it kind of starts a little bit before that in terms of faith. Like you had the confidence and faith that if you did the right things, that the universe would reward you. But I think a lot of people, they have good aptitude. They're intelligent people, but they just don't have the confidence that if they do the right things, the good things will happen.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I'm probably super lucky that I got, as I say, luck is a big part of it, But it was interesting. It's like a dance with luck. You do some stuff and then you get lucky, and you do some stuff and you get lucky. So for me, I took this huge risk to put on my first nightclub party when I was 18. And I rented the top nightclub in town. And then I approached McDonald's to be the sponsor, and I approached the radio station to be the sponsor, and they said yes, but I had committed to this venue. And then I run this nightclub party, and I think I made, $5,000-6,000 in a night, and it was all cash, and it was wow, this is amazing, this was amazing, huge. And then I ran 6 of those that year. But then because I had done those nightclub parties, John took me on as his apprentice. So when I sat down with John for that first conversation, my mentor, he only took me on because he'd seen me hustling and creating the nightclub parties. So that luck came from this hustle. So bit of hustle, the luck, hustle, the luck.